reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
There's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled, dedicated police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. It's man versus the food aisle, as a trip leads to a huge personal injury claim.
There is a more sinister underlying background to this.
A specialist fraud-busting force are on the hunt for two men suspected of defrauding a charity.
This particular case is quite unpleasant.
And a 13-ton fire truck is blamed for wrecking a car.
Personally, I think it's a disgrace. It's sickening.
Supermarket shopping, you know what it's like. So many choices, mayonnaise, no, bread. Where are the peaches? Oh, half-price toothpaste. But watch your step. Before you know it, you've tripped over the debris left on a floor by a careless shelf stacker. This is a supermarket in Northern Ireland. The man on the floor, Daniel Braniff, looks to be in a lot of pain. That's because he's just taken a hard fall in this food aisle. The culprit, some of this.
The allegation was that he fell over some plastic banding in the shop.
What had started out as a trip to the supermarket was now going to end up as a visit to A&E.
He went to the hospital and sought treatment for this soft tissue injury to his left side.
With an injury that could potentially hinder him for months, the crocked Daniel Braniff decided to make a claim against the supermarket.
Mr. Braniff brought the claim to our attention the day after the alleged incident. Slipping in a supermarket is not uncommon, and it's why supermarkets pay a lot of attention to ensuring that their aisles are clean and clear.
It seemed the supermarket Braniff had been shopping in hadn't been so diligent with its tidiness. It was looking like a potentially costly mistake. Daniel Braniff submitted a £12,000 injury claim against him. And he had a piece of physical evidence to support his claim, in the form of the plastic strap, which he'd scooped up after the accident. Solid evidence or not, the claim would have to be thoroughly checked. The expert handlers of the insurance company dealing with the case set about their work. Very soon, alarm bells were ringing. The insurance company felt that this claim needed a closer look. They requested to see the CCTV footage from the supermarket at the time of the incident.
In the footage, you'll see Mr. Braniff talking on his mobile phone and walking around the store.
All fairly innocuous. But when Daniel Braniff finishes his phone call, his actions take a bizarre twist.
When we first saw the video containing Mr. Braniff's accident, frankly, we couldn't believe that he had the effrontery to make a claim for this.
That's because the footage does not reveal Daniel Braniff innocently walking into the plastic hazard in front of him, as his claim would have you believe. Instead, it shows this. Braniff, fully aware of the plastic strapping on the floor, executing an extremely unconvincing trick.
There's no sophistication to this attempted fraud at all. It is really quite comical.
The whole farce begins 40 seconds before the trip. The CCTV footage shows Braniff exiting the aisle, at which point he treads on the packaging. Instantly, he puts his devious plan into action.
It's quite clear that in the video he carefully tries to maneuver a piece of plastic banding around his foot, and when he's quite comfortable that nobody is looking, he then falls over. We immediately decided not to pay this claim and took Mr. Braniff to the police service of Northern Ireland, where we alleged that he had attempted to defraud us and ultimately the supermarket.
Appearing in court, Daniel Braniff pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 4 months in custody, suspended for 3 years and fined £250.
When we saw the footage, it was one of those that drew people around to look at it. But there is a more sinister underlying background to this, because ultimately this person is making a substantial claim for damages against the supermarket and ultimately the insurer, and it is clear out-and-out fraud.
Any wannabe fraudsters should tread very carefully. In the next few months, a register of convicted fraudsters is being rolled out. Accessible to every major insurance company in Britain, anyone on the list might find it a lot harder to get cheap insurance.
People should think again before they get tempted to do this, because the consequences are they will get prosecuted and their name will be put on the insurance fraud register, which will impact them in the future.
Insurance fraud is on the rise, and if you have insurance of any kind, you're footing the bill. But the fraudsters better watch their backs.
IFED is a 35-strong unit that works tirelessly to hunt down and prosecute insurance fraudsters wherever they may be throughout England and Wales.
Through a combination of investigation, industry connections and the element of surprise, they've made over 300 arrests and stopped millions of pounds from going to the criminals, money which ultimately goes back in our pockets.
It's highly likely now, if you commit any insurance fraud, you will get caught.
It's 6 a.m. and 2 IFED teams are on the roll. The two teams are 90 miles apart, but both heading to raid locations linked to a single bank account. Head of IFED DCI David Wood is attending the operation.
We're on our way to our suspect's address. There's another car with 2 officers that are going to meet us nearby. This particular case is quite unpleasant because the victims are actually a children's charity.
The charity has had its bank account details stolen. Whoever stole them is now using the account to purchase motor vehicle insurance. Despite living in different cities, the 2 men being targeted by IFED today are both suspected of using the same charity bank account details.
It's particularly unpleasant, this one. However, we must remain professional.
DCI Wood's team arrive at the raid location at 6:15.
We're never exactly sure who's going to be there when we get there, but obviously we do our checks, and this guy should be there with his family, but we don't know, so we've got to be on our toes. That was Mum. That's the IFED knock on the door.
London, please. Yes, yes. Okay, I'm looking for...
The man who has opened the door is not the suspect.
Okay, and I believe that he resides here.
Yes, yeah.
Is he around at the moment?
DCI Wood's suspicions are confirmed. The suspect does live at the property, but despite it being 6:20 a.m, he's not in.
We've made contact with him via telephone, and it's hoped that we're going to meet him very shortly. He won't give us his current location. However, we're keen to speak to him, and we're hoping that he's going to be with us. It's now at 6:25. By 8 o'clock, we'll be speaking to him, fingers crossed. But unfortunately now we're in his hands a little bit because we don't know exactly where he is.
"90 miles away, the other IFED team is closing in on its raid address.
We're all travelling now in convoy to the address where we hope to find our suspects. We're just going to be knocking on the address here, where we expect the suspect to be.
Good morning. How are you? What's your name?
The suspect in this address is also under investigation for purchasing insurance using the same stolen details of the same charity bank account.
Just to make sure nobody else is here. The team is just checking upstairs now to see if anybody else is upstairs and see if our suspect's here.
Come through here, Goodley. Right, as I said, I'm in the City of London Police, in the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, okay, in the Economic Crime in the City of London Police. What we're here for today is an inquiry in relation to an insurance policy that was taken out with fraudulent bank details, okay, and we don't believe that the person who took that policy out, the car was registered to you, it was your vehicle, taken out over the internet. We don't believe that that person had permission to use the bank details to take out that policy, okay? I believe that you're responsible for that, and as such, I'm arresting you for fraud by false representation. You do not have to say anything that may harm your defence. You do not mention or question something which you later rely on the court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
IFED is closing in on its target. The man on the left is very angry, and with good reason. He's just had a very frightening experience. He was in the passenger seat of the black car when a fire engine smashed into it.
He claimed that we hit his vehicle with sufficient force to actually lift it up off the ground, push it towards the pumps on the station forecourt, and as a result of that heavy collision caused him whiplash injuries.
A fire engine is not the kind of vehicle you want to tangle with. The average fire engine is 7 metres long, 2.5 metres wide, and weighs in at a hefty 13 tonnes. It's easy to understand how a behemoth like this could wreck a car and damage your neck in one swipe.
Immediately after the crash, 2 men came over to our vehicle. Our driver and the officer in charge of the vehicle got out, had a word with them, had a look at the damage to their vehicle and the minor damage to our vehicle, exchanged all our insurance details, and then we basically got back on the fire engine and left the scene.
The claimant's whiplash wasn't going away, and there were further complications to come.
He claimed injury to his neck, his shoulders, which was quite severe for the first 2 months. They lasted 7 months in total. He also claimed he'd suffered psychiatric injury and had flashbacks for 3 to 4 weeks, and he was anxious driving his vehicle for a total period of 4 months.
The severely inconvenienced crash victim decided to make a claim against the Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service.
That claim was valued about £10,000, taking into account his damages, his own solicitor's costs and the cost to the Greater Manchester Fire Service.
It was an annoying situation for the fire service. Because it self-insures, the £10,000 was going to have to come out of its own pockets.
This isn't something whereby the insurers are being affected by it. It's actually the public organisation that's being affected by it. And any kind of money that goes out of the organisation without good cause will have an impact ultimately on frontline services.
Before the £10,000 could be paid out, as standard, the Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service needed to check their own incident report against the claim.
There were some inconsistencies with the claim which caused us to look at it in detail. The fire engine suffered minor cosmetic damage to the handle of the locker and the front indicator. The firefighters hardly noticed the incident at all. They only became aware of it when they heard the car horn.
Suddenly, the brakes were put on the claim. The fire crew's version of events were in stark contrast to the claimant's description of being in a car that was thrown in the air. The fire brigade, wanting to know more, decided to roll out some technology.
The cameras that we have on board, there is one pointing in every direction. There's one in the front cab, there's one on either side, and then there's one at roof level on the rear of the vehicle.
Luckily, one of the cameras had a clear view of the garage forecourt. Everyone was about to find out what happened on the day of the collision.
Garage forecourt was quite busy on that night, and at the same time there's a car wash that wasn't that far away from where the actual vehicle was parked, our vehicle and their vehicle was parked. So then when our fire engine came to drive away from the pumps, it was a really tight turn.
And here is the video footage. Just as the claimant reported, the fire engine rams into the front of the parked car, sending it and its occupants flying towards one of the petrol pumps. Hang on, did I just miss that? Nope, the car doesn't move at all.
CCTV footage showed the fire engine moving off very slowly, turning across the front of the claimant's vehicle, and it shows the touching of the vehicles. You can see from the CCTV footage that the vehicle moves hardly, if at all.
The collision wasn't dangerous in any way. From the CCTV footage, this was a really low-speed, minor collision, and the estimate is that we were doing less than 5 miles an hour.
Flying cars, whiplash and psychological damage, all a lie. The whole claim from the car passenger was an opportunistic attempt at fraud.
The outcome of this case was, once we disclosed the CCTV footage, the claimant realised the game was over. He quickly discontinued the claim before he got into more serious trouble. Unfortunately, he had to repay nearly £6,000 of legal costs to the defendant. He put himself at risk of a criminal prosecution, and it was reported in the local newspaper, the Manchester Evening News. Well, personally, I think it's a disgrace. It's sickening. These people put their lives on the risk every hour of the day, protecting us, our families, our children, our property, and this is how they're repaid by some sectors of society. It's disgraceful, unbelievable.
I'd say to anybody who's thinking about making any kind of claim like this, is don't do it. We will investigate every claim that is made, and certainly every one of our vehicles has CCTV cameras which point in every direction, so we will find out that it's a fraudulent claim.
On Britain's busy roads, there are thousands of collisions every day. If you're involved in one, you might want some professional help processing your claim. Who do you turn to?
If you've had a non-fault claim, you might go to a claims management company after the accident for them to help you pursue your claim against an insurance company.
A claims management company will help you with the complex process of paperwork, medical examinations, vehicle repair, and temporary vehicle hire. They sound like the white knights of the road, there when you really need them. That might be true of most of them, but it turns out a growing number of claims management companies are committing insurance fraud. Fraudulent claims management companies use a variety of different techniques to commit fraud, and one of their methods is very dangerous: the induced accident.
So this is where a gang of criminals will take a vehicle out onto a public road, they'll pay somebody to drive that car and induce accidents. So they're effectively paying drivers to cause accidents on public roads.
After tricking an innocent person into crashing into one of their paid drivers, the fraudulent claims management company will then deal with the claim that results from the induced collision. It's a big earner for the fraudsters.
Crash for cash scams cost the industry nearly £400 million a year. That equates to a lot of money to all of us on our premiums.
One claims management company, Cami Claims, operating out of North London, was a big fan of the induced accident. And if you were a responsible car owner with insurance, you were a potential crash target for the crooked Cami Claims.
In order for the frauds that Cami Claims were committing to succeed, they required innocent members of the public to be the victims to their scams. So they were looking for people that were insured, people that were on the school run, people that were innocent members of the public that paid their premium so they could then make a fraudulent claim on their policies.
They had been getting away with it for years, generating millions of pounds worth of fraudulent claims in the process. Things were looking good for the North London business, but it wasn't going to last. 10 miles across town in West London, a powerful enemy had clocked the fraudulent claims management company and was closing in. In the summer of 2012, D.I. Hindmarsh and his unit were in the final stages of an investigation into Cami Claims.
We received information that a particular claims management company operating out of North London were involved in setting up induced collisions and then dealing with the claims and obviously reaping the rewards of the financial benefit.
Strengthening their position, the Met Traffic Unit has many allies in the world of insurance. One of them is the Insurance Fraud Bureau. It has access to information about nearly every insurance policy in the country. That amount of information gives you a serious advantage when tackling fraudsters.
A key part of the role of the IFB is to find the trends and patterns that are invisible to other parts of the industry.
And very quickly, a pattern emerged.
And when we started to look at the claims that were connected to CAMI claims, there were a suspicious number of similarities between all the accidents. And if you had a genuine claims management company, you'd expect them to deal with a variety of different types of claims.
The Met Traffic Unit and the IFB were closing in. And it seemed that CAMI claims' penchant for causing crashes could be their downfall.
CAMI claims were using very similar methods for all the claims that they were pursuing. They were induced accidents, and they were all in the London area, and the accidents that were taking place were commonly on roundabouts or slip roads.
The evidence was stacked against the still active fraudulent claims management company. DI Hindmarsh was ready to pounce. In the summer of 2012, we filmed the Met Traffic Unit as they brought down the fraudulent CAMI claims.
They were an organised criminal gang that needed to be stopped. Once we were happy, we'd looked at all of the evidence that we had. We took the steps to obtain a number of search warrants. I'm outside the accident management company now. On the day of the raids, we did 3 search warrants. One on the claims management company, which resulted in some cash and some fraudulent documents being recovered.
This was one of the biggest fraudulent claims management companies ever investigated. The evidence trail continued.
We then went to the address of one of the claims management company owners.
Mr. Please, can you open up, please?
Needing more evidence, the Met Traffic Unit was very keen to gain entry to the flat.
We seized a number of documents from that address. There was a great deal of paperwork seized. I think it related to somewhere in the regions of 250 claims that they were currently dealing with on behalf of customers.
DI Hindmarsh and his unit hadn't just come for paperwork. They were also going to take the tools of the trade from the fraudsters.
We also seized around about 10 cars. We were able to show that these particular vehicles had been involved in the crime. Effectively, they're exhibits, as you would seize a forged document. That was the reason that we took the cars.
The raid had been a complete success.
The matter was listed at Southwark Crown Court on the 1st of February 2013. The 2 people who we charged was Ion Vaduva and Andrei Majelik. They had both been charged with conspiracy to defraud the insurance industry, and they both pleaded guilty.
Another crash for cash gang had been brought down by the Met Traffic Unit and the IFB, making our roads a little bit safer to drive on.
It's important that claims management companies like CAMI Claims are shut down. It's not a victimless crime. Firstly, in order to make a lot of these claims, innocent members of the public's safety is being put at risk. Secondly, insurance companies are not the only people that pay for this fraud. Ultimately, as consumers, we all pay for the cost in our premiums.
Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED, is tracking down 2 suspects 90 miles apart. Both suspects are alleged to have used stolen bank account details in order to purchase vehicle insurance.
This particular case is quite unpleasant because the victims are actually a children's charity.
The team, led by DCI David Wood, is lying in wait for its suspect, who wasn't at his home address this morning. 90 miles away, the other IFED team has arrested its suspect.
What we're going to do is we're going to search this premises. We have authority to do it under Section 32 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act when you've been arrested, okay? For anything in relation to that offence or any other offence of a similar nature, okay? Do you have anything within this premises that you want to show us in relation to the policy that I talked about? No, okay. All right. If you bear with us then, we'll conduct the search and then we'll go from here to a local police station, okay? I'll just ask you to sit tight. and assist us with that, okay?
The search for potential evidence of fraud begins. Specifically, IFED is looking for items relating to the insurance purchased with the charity's stolen bank account details. IFED decides to focus the search on the suspect's bedroom.
One or two items in here that I'll be looking to see is a computer, because he's taken out the policy using his computer.
A cluttered surface in the suspect's room draws the attention of DI Angela Rogers.
Okay, that's just a mobile phone that was on the top of the chest of drawers.
DI Rogers methodically sifts through the stacks of paperwork and makes a potentially rewarding find in the form of a bank statement.
This one's just in another name that I don't recognise, so just double check this one. Be concerned as to why they've got a bank account opened in somebody else's name. The address is for this address. I'd be concerned that maybe it's been opened in a false name.
Amongst the clutter, DI Rogers unearths another vehicle registration document linked to the stolen bank account detail.
This is a V5 document for the vehicle he'd insured using the charity trust account.
The suspect is taken away for further questioning at a local police station. The search is over.
It's been a very successful search as far as we're concerned.
It's been a good result for this IFED team, but it's only one half of a two-location raid. 90 miles away, DCI David Wood's patience has paid off.
Come on, man.
Let's have a chat in the car.
After a 3-hour stakeout, his suspect has finally turned up.
You'll realise we're decent people.
Anything you do say may be given in evidence, and the offence that you're being arrested for is fraud by false representation. Okay, so what's going to happen now is that I'm going to make a quick phone call to the control room. They're going to allocate a police station for us, and then we'll go there, get you interviewed and get you back out.
It took a little bit longer than planned, but DCI Wood is a happy man.
The investigation is now fully underway. Suspects are in custody, so it's been a successful morning, albeit it didn't go exactly to plan, but sometimes these things don't. But both suspects are now in police detention, which is the objective of the exercise.
A great outcome for both of IFED's teams in their ongoing fight against the crime of insurance fraud. Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
There's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled, dedicated police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those conmen, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the Met Traffic Unit collars some suspected fraudsters on an early morning raid.
Do you work here?
I don't work
You seem quite at home, you're caught up and things.
A lost dog at the centre of a pet insurance claim makes a remarkable comeback.
Another local vet has just contacted me for the veterinary history of that dog that supposedly was washed off the cliff because it's just been registered with them.
And a crash for cash gang is caught out trying to tangle with a truck.
Experience tells you when you're viewing footage that some things are not quite right.
This busy station is in Middlesbrough, in the northeast of England. Thousands of passengers pass through its bustling foyer every day. In the summer of 2011, it was the scene of a dangerous accident that led to a large insurance claim. Here's the man in question, moments before he fell and suffered serious injury. Lee Ingram from First Group's Transportation Claims Division worked on the case.
He's alleging that as he is walking across the foyer, he has tripped in a gap, which he is describing as a defect on the floor, fallen over and injured himself. The gentleman is alleging that from this particular trip, he has sustained injuries to his head, causing an open head wound. Subsequently, he's then alleging that he has sustained dizzy spells and succumbed to headaches. This is some 2 months after the incident. He's still got headaches and suffering from dizziness.
His ongoing health problems indicated that this had been no minor accident.
He's describing a traumatic head injury. Head injuries are always something we would be concerned about. Often concussion is not immediately apparent to the person who sustained the concussion. Head injuries can also lead to cognitive issues which will impair function, possible speech issues, and maybe loss of short-term or long-term memory. So they're always something we will investigate seriously.
It was a potentially life-changing injury. But when Transportation Claims went to call up the accident report, they found that there wasn't one.
The gentleman concerned alleges that he did not report this particular incident to anyone because the station ticket office was closed and there was no one around for him to report to at the time.
It was clear that the case needed further investigation. Luckily, the station is covered by CCTV, and the cameras had captured everything from that evening. Immediately before the accident, the man is seen to cross the foyer. He then falls over in a dramatic manner.
When you see what has transpired in this particular footage, it makes you suddenly start thinking, well, this is a bit strange.
What they saw on camera made Lee and his team suspicious.
And you would expect in this type of fall for someone to fall forward quite quickly. The first reaction when you take a fall like that is to put your arms out to break your fall. We don't see that in this situation.
Instead, the footage raises serious questions.
We see the chap immediately going to hold his head before he hits the fall, suggesting that he may well be trying to break his fall because he knew it was coming.
What's more, the footage shows numerous other passengers encountering no difficulty with the alleged defect in the floor tiling.
We see around about 15 people walking over, around and across, some people even standing in the actual area where this person is alleging he's tripped. Just the sheer number that walk over it would suggest it wasn't the issue that the claimant is making it out to be.
And the discrepancies didn't stop there. The claimant alleged that he didn't report the incident because there were no station staff around, but this was disproved.
When you look at the footage, you will see a number of people wearing high-vis jackets, which would have been station employees that he could have reported this particular fall to.
But that's not all that's revealed by the footage. Perhaps the most telling piece of evidence was right at the beginning of the tape. A little girl is seen scooting around the foyer.
And at one stage, she runs over the tile, dislodging one of the tiles. She stops a little bit further on, turns round, and goes and replaces the tile where it's come from, obviously showing that there is a loose tile in the foyer.
Significantly, this all happens within view of the claimant.
Preceding the fall, you will see the gentleman walk towards the defect, take a deliberate look at it, walk on past it, lengthening his stride so he can actually step over the area in question. He then walks towards the foyer, he turns round at the stairs,
walks back towards the area, and you can visibly see him deviate to the left so that he can place his right foot deliberately into the area concerned. He does stumble forward as if his legs have been taken away from him. I think he's given a great performance. He possibly could have won awards for that.
Transportation Claims felt they had all the evidence they needed to strike out the claimant's demand for compensation. They sent the CCTV to the claimant's solicitors and waited for a response.
2 years on, we've still not had a response from them as to whether they're withdrawing their claim, so we'll take it as read that they actually are. For him to think he can get away with this sort of thing is quite naive and bordering on ridiculous.
A dodgy vet is caught cashing in on treatments for pets that never existed.
The only element of truth was the fact that the vet who was submitting the invoices for this expensive treatment was a real vet.
A Met Traffic Unit raid on an accident management company turns up a truckload of potential evidence.
There are multiple registration documents, hundreds and hundreds of insurance claim forms, the usual mobile phones that are used in the claims. Basically, it's a gold mine.
This is the home of the Met Traffic Unit. Set up in 2010, this specialist department is dedicated to reducing the number of traffic-related deaths, injuries and crimes on the streets of the capital.
We search for people who are wanted for serious offences. My team have made 300 arrests in the last 2.5 years, which is around about 50 operations. Every one of those operations will have resulted in a prosecution.
Their aim is to make our roads as safe as possible. Criminal gangs operating insurance scams are responsible for the rise of a terrifying new danger on our roads: crash for cash. DI Dave Hindmarsh of the Met Traffic Unit is once again spearheading the initiative to stop the gangs in their tracks.
You have the most serious types of cash for crash, which is the induced collision. And this is primarily where criminal gang members go out onto the roads with two cars. They'll drive in tandem looking for their victim. They'll position themselves in front, and then the decoy car, which will be the lead car, will brake hard. That gives the middle car, the one that they want to be damaged, a reason to brake, catch their victim out, and they'll run into the back. And that is a typical cash for crash scenario. The insurance industry have estimated that it costs them somewhere in the range of £392 million per year, but I think it's probably bigger than that. It is an extremely dangerous way of earning some money because you are putting innocent members of the public at risk. Cash for crash gangs will target commercial vehicles for the simple reason is they're insured. They know they're going to be insured, and that's what they want. They don't want to cause a crash with someone who might not be insured.
Because fraudsters go after commercial fleet vehicles, some insurance companies like Towergate have taken the innovative step of supplying fleet vehicles with forward-facing cameras.
That is one of the cameras that we use. As you can see, it's quite small, and we sight them behind the rearview mirror.
But it's not the size that's important.
Towergate introduced them as a method of determining legal liability following an accident. We see what the driver sees.
The cameras certainly prove their worth in the case of a collision on a busy A road in July 2010. One of their vehicles had hit the car in front. It sounded like a standard rear-end shunt, but the footage revealed something more sinister. They passed it to DI Hindmarsh.
In the footage, what you see is a blue Mercedes and a black VW Golf. The black VW Golf is the decoy car, the car that's there to give the blue Mercedes a reason to brake. And effectively, the footage shows the two vehicles manoeuvring themselves in front of the lorry, and at the last moment, the black Golf brakes hard, turns left into a side road, causing the blue Mercedes to brake and stop, and the lorry crashes into the back with some significant rear damage.
Experience tells you when you're viewing footage that some things are not quite right.
It's quite a large impact. Now, the people involved in this are almost stunt drivers because I've watched that bit of footage several times, and at the last moment, just before impact, the driver of the Mercedes comes off the brakes and turns the steering wheel to the left. So therefore, he is hit, but he's almost pushed out of the way and round the corner rather than being pushed into incoming traffic.
The shocking footage had actually captured a crash for cash gang in action, and the investigation eventually uncovered a huge web of criminality stretching across the country.
The decoy car, the black Golf that you see in the footage, the driver came from Luton. The Mercedes that you see getting damaged, the owner of that car lives in London. One of the passengers in the car lived in Manchester, and the claims management company that were going to handle some of the aspect of this claim were in South Yorkshire.
The Met Traffic Unit investigated the main players seen in the footage.
We knew who the owner of the Mercedes was, and it was a matter of finding out who his associates were. Ansab Rizwan was the managing director of an accident management company in Yorkshire. His brother, Isham Gondal, was a passenger in the Mercedes, and Tariq Mahmood, we identified, was the driver of the decoy car.
Dave Hindmarsh and his team had enough evidence to launch a full-scale investigation.
It resulted in the accident management company in Yorkshire being subject of a search warrant, and we searched the premises and took all the files. That highlighted a number of other collisions in London, Manchester, and around the sort of the Luton, Bedfordshire area.
The suspects were arrested, and the case eventually came to court.
They all pleaded guilty. Tariq Mahmood was seen as the most serious of the people concerned. You know, he was the one that had caused the crashes at the end of the day. He got 12 months imprisonment. Ansab Rizwan and his brother Isham Gondal, they received suspended sentences and 180 hours unpaid work. And Nasser Khan, who was the gentleman who had allowed his car to be used, he received a community order as a result. So people who previously hadn't been in trouble with the police before have now got criminal records, and some have gone to prison.
The sentences reflected the seriousness of the crime.
Crash for cash at the end of the day risks injuring innocent people in a staged road accident.
It's a very real danger. In February 2013, a gang was jailed for their role in the tragic death of a young woman caught up in a crash for cash accident.
If a lot more commercial vehicles and even private cars were fitted with cameras, it would be a massive use to ourselves and the insurance companies.
We think of the UK as a nation of animal lovers, but unscrupulous fraudsters are exploiting our furry friends in order to line their pockets. Disturbing figures from the Association of British Insurers show pet insurance fraud quadrupled from £420,000 in 2009 to almost £2 million in 2010. Simon Wheeler is Managing Director of Agria Pet Insurance. He reviewed a claim for a payout for a missing dog.
It was a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. It was nearly 4 years old.
The claimant contacted the company to explain what had happened to the poor pooch.
The policyholder and the dog had been in Cornwall, near the seaside, and the dog had been washed out to sea off a rock, and that was the last the policyholder saw of the dog. This is quite obviously traumatic for the owner because in the claim form she was very upset and the dog had been washed out to sea in front of her eyes and she hadn't got it back.
Despite the heartbreak of losing the dog, the policyholder would receive a silver lining in the form of a payout and promptly sent through the documentation in support of the claim.
The claim form was completed by the policyholder and the full veterinary section was completed as well by her local vet.
As part of the claims procedure, Agria contacted the veterinary practice associated with the dog to check the animal had been registered with them and that the vet who signed the form worked there.
The veterinary practice instantly said, yes, this is one of our patients, and that this vet works at the practice. That vet at the time who had signed the claim form was on holiday when we contacted them, though. Nothing really led us to suggest that there was fraudulent activity on this claim, and indeed we settled the claim. Fairly low value for £300.
But then Agria were contacted by the vet who had just returned from her holiday.
She was pretty confident that she hadn't filled out the claim form, she hadn't signed the claim form, because as far as she was concerned, if she couldn't identify the pet and that the pet had died, she wouldn't have signed a veterinary certificate to say that it had died.
The claim form was faxed through to the vet, who confirmed that it wasn't her signature and pointed out another discrepancy.
The practice stamp that had been included on the claim form actually wasn't their practice stamp. So more than likely the policyholder had a stamp made up to add that level of authenticity to the claim.
It seemed clear that Agria was dealing with a fraudulent claim. Although they'd gone to some lengths to create a genuine-looking form, they had totally underestimated the insurer's determination to stamp out fraud.
We went back to the policyholder and said, we believe you're acting fraudulently, we've been in contact with the veterinary practice, and they didn't complete this claim form at all. Very shortly afterwards, we got a cheque in the post from the policyholder for the £300, a letter of explanation to say that somebody in the policyholder's household had completed the claim form and submitted it fraudulently.
But the whole shaggy dog story didn't end there. 4 months later, Agria were contacted again by the dog's vet, who had uncovered a staggering new development.
She rang up and said, you're not going to believe this. Another local vet has just contacted me for the veterinary history of that dog that supposedly was washed off the cliff because it's just been registered with them.
It appeared that the dog had never been washed off a rock and drowned. It was alive and well and had just registered with a new vet. It's one thing for owners to attempt to pull the wool over insurers' eyes, but what really gives pause for thought is the behaviour of dishonest vets. Detective Constable Alex Cooley from IFED, the City of London's Police Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, worked on one such case. His team was alerted to a pet insurance claim for veterinary work that appeared suspicious.
We first received a referral from one of the insurance companies who had spotted the discrepancy between the work being claimed for by the vet and the fact that that type of work wasn't carried out by that particular practice.
It didn't add up, and IFED carried out further inquiries.
And we identified another insurance company who had 4 suspicious claims coming from the same vet.
The man in question was Francisco Cruz, a vet working at a practice in Norfolk.
We were looking at 5 claims in total involving both cats and dogs who were alleged to have chewed pieces of plastic, leading to medical difficulties and requiring expensive surgery. So, on average, the claims were coming out at about £2,500.
The fact that all 5 claims were for a type of surgery that didn't take place at Cruz's workplace seemed suspicious, but more evidence was needed. When they looked into the identities of the policyholders, it seemed that they had the proof that they were after.
The names that he was using were a sort of hodgepodge of members of his close family, but also his friends and even children of his friends. Couldn't detect any particular reason behind that other than sort of imaginative laziness.
It turned out that every detail about the claims was false, even the pets themselves.
The only element of truth was the fact that the vet was a real vet. So the vet was forging his own invoices in respect of work which was never carried out. And then he was making claims against the policies that he had totally made up concerning these fake pets.
Cruz was abusing his position as a vet to pass off fake claims, but he hadn't covered his tracks, and the IFED team had enough evidence to arrest him. Cruz's motivation was clearly financial.
And in order to pay off certain debts, he was making a fake claim at about a rate of 1 every year. In total, he made £10,000 from his offending.
The case eventually reached court, and Cruz was found guilty. He was sentenced to a suspended 8-month jail term, 200 hours community service, and ordered to pay £10,000 compensation. But perhaps the greatest cost is to Cruz's professional reputation. Gordon Hockey is head of legal services at the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, the body that regulates every vet in the UK.
All vets on becoming members make a declaration, in effect, to put the animals and the public first. And where veterinary surgeons are dishonest, commit insurance fraud, that's clearly not putting animals first and not putting the public first. And so it is taken seriously by the college. The vast majority of vets are law-abiding and are honest. So this happens very rarely. The most severe sanction that the RCVS can impose on a veterinary surgeon is to take their name off the register, to strike them off the register, which means that they can't practice and they therefore can't earn a living as a veterinary surgeon.
Today, the Metropolitan Police Traffic Unit has assembled for a briefing about a raid they're about to carry out on an accident management company.
Basically, Operation is around the accident management company. The Insurance Fraud Bureau have identified several claims which can be described as suspicious circumstances. We need to do a bit of investigation into the legitimacy of the claims that seem to be handling.
They've been given a tip-off by the Insurance Fraud Bureau.
Basically, today the intention will be to execute a search warrant at the address.
Accident management companies process claims on behalf of victims of road traffic accidents. They organise hire vehicles, refer cases to lawyers, and manage personal injury claims. Unfortunately, there are many examples of accident management companies acting fraudulently by inventing or inflating claims. The Met Traffic Unit is planning to execute a search warrant on the premises of an accident management company in the hope of collecting evidence to support their case of suspected fraud. Once they've arrived at the location, they identify the premises and then move in as quickly as possible to make sure no one escapes or tries to hide vital evidence.
Hello mate, got any ID on you? Yeah. Okay.
The first thing they do is ask everyone for ID. The officers need to work out who's a client and who's an employee. But some of the people in the office appear to be holding back.
I know how old I am. Why don't you know how old you are?
Not 32 then.
You're sure you're 32?
Yeah, 32.
Yeah, you're not going to change it? No? Okay.
Others seem to be confused about their role at the company.
What's your position here?
Yeah, it's my brother's company.
It's your brother's company?
Yeah.
But do you work here, though?
I don't work
You
here.
seem quite at home with your coat off and stuff like that. You seem quite at home with your coat off and things.
I'm looking after him.
After who?
I'm looking after my brother's work.
Oh, you're looking after... So you do work here?
Yeah, sometime I come here.
That's what I said. I said, do you work here?
No,
And you said no.
I don't work.
Yeah.
I sometimes come here, see the things.
The traffic unit needs to speak to the owner, but he isn't in the office and has left his brother in charge.
It's just that I class this as what you've said as working here.
Sorry?
I class what you've said as you working here.
No, I'm
You're
not
not just a person that's just coming off the street, are you?
No.
That's the point I'm trying to say, yeah?
No.
Yeah, we'll let you keep things simple, all right? It just takes longer if we don't.
No problem.
Do you understand that, yeah?
Eventually, everyone has been checked and identified, and most are allowed to leave. The job of collecting evidence can now get underway. As the team go through the premises, the sheer size of the task becomes apparent. The office is stuffed full of cupboards and filing cabinets.
It's one of the officers at the moment. Eventually we'll be taking all the files out and we'll look at it at a later stage. When we've got a bit more time to spread it all out, we can't do it at the scene. It's just totally impractical.
Yeah, basically we're just systematically going through, bagging up all the property, so we don't miss anything, and obviously for continuity as well. It does take a bit of time, but it's something which has got to be done properly.
Yes.
7 mobile telephones.
The mobile phones could be an important piece of evidence for a number of reasons.
You can get lots of details off them. You can link them into different collisions, different false claims, and you can also get an idea of who's working here and whose phone it ultimately belongs to. Obviously, once they've been examined, then we'll find out exactly what their involvement is. It may well be quite innocent, but you don't normally find bags of mobile phones lying around.
The owner of the company belatedly arrives at the scene.
The guy sitting behind me with a baseball cap is in fact the owner of the premises. He's heard what's been going on because obviously his brother was here when we first entered the premises, and he's obviously come along to see what's going on. So he's taken away his business.
It's important to follow up all the suspected evidence, and that includes keys to cars being stored or used for hire.
Everything centres around the fact that some of the claims for car hires, car hiring, storage and that are believed to be fraudulent, so any of the vehicles are probably part of that as well. They're part of the overall potentially criminal enterprise that we're looking at. 30 keys here, but there could be more.
So far, DC Tony Recchia is pleased with how well the raid is going.
Well, we basically found things that we were looking for. There are multiple registration documents. hundreds and hundreds of insurance claim forms, the usual mobile phones that are used in the claims. Basically, it's a gold mine.
DI Dave Hindmarsh has arrived at the location to oversee proceedings.
The team have come down to execute a search warrant, and as a result there's been a large amount of property seized from the premises. The intention is a lorry will arrive and we will load all of the seized property onto the lorry, and in our leisure we will sift through it to see which bits are evidence and which bits are not.
The team isn't taking any chances and has seized a huge volume of potential evidence, leaving the office practically bare.
It's been several months in the planning to get to the stage that we are now, meticulously looking through records and investigating in the background before we came out today.
The challenge is now to take it away safely.
4 crates, that's exactly what we're dealing with here, loads of property.
Once the crates are full, the team moves on to the next stage in the process.
They're just heat shrinking the packages to ensure the continuity and integrity of the exhibit. If they're heat shrinked at the scene, it's all documented. Nobody will say that it's been tampered with or anything's been added or taken away. It's all been documented what's gone in. So it's a good way of keeping stuff together. It will stay that way until they get opened and re-examined at a later stage.
It's a really satisfying moment, this, watching all the bags being sealed up. We've got 2 large crates that have been sealed up now, and 3 filing cabinets all full of files.
The sheer volume of work that's needed to trawl through the suspected evidence is proof of the Met Traffic Unit's commitment to stamping out fraud. They'll stop at nothing to make our roads safe. Is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
The subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled dedicated police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Police squad dedicated to stamping out insurance fraud executes an early morning raid.
Our job would be made easier if you tell us where your paperwork is. All right, no problem. We'll search the whole place. No.
A man who claims he's too disabled to work is caught lugging kitchen units at a warehouse.
It was quite galling. If it wasn't so serious, it would be humorous.
And a fraudulent claim for an old banger goes nowhere after the owner is caught providing fake photos.
One of the photographs that he'd supplied was a direct lift from the website of a Bentley dealership.
Building sites are known for strict health and safety regulations, but accidents do happen. In 2005, a fall from a vehicle like this resulted in a personal injury case so fiercely contested that it led to a change in the law. David Spencer from law firm Berryman's Lace Moore worked on the case. He started by looking into the man at the centre of the claim, Sean Summers.
He says that he slipped from a stacker truck, which is a kind of JCB type vehicle. The injuries that Sean sustained were a fracture to his wrist, which was relatively minor and relatively straightforward. The fracture to his ankle was quite serious. It required pins being put in and a second operation for a bone graft.
No one had witnessed the accident, and a judge ruled that Summers' employers, Fairclough Homes, were liable. The insurers would have to compensate him for any loss suffered as a result of the accident. And if Sean Summers' claims about the extent of his injuries were true, the losses would be considerable.
According to him, he couldn't walk without the aid of elbow crutches. He wasn't able to walk up and down stairs. He wasn't able to stand for long periods of time.
Just as serious was his assertion that he would never work again.
So his claim for loss of earnings for a man who was in his middle 20s was significant, into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds. And because he said that he was unlikely to fully recover from his injuries, he also said that he would continue to require care and services for the rest of his life.
The various costs came to a grand total of £838,000. But it seemed out of all proportion to the actual injuries he'd suffered.
We've seen similar and worse injuries where people have made a quicker and better recovery. And so one of the lines of inquiry is to make sure that the claimant is being honest in his presentation.
With this in mind, they decided there was only one option: surveillance. They approached Roger Bescaby, whose company specialises in covert surveillance, to work on the case. His operatives immediately got to work. It wasn't long before secret filming revealed a very different Sean Summers to the man he was purporting to be.
Here was a guy who was showing no signs of disability. There were certainly no walking aids in place. He boarded and alighted a vehicle very easily. And I think it was actually quite useful that we had such an accurate description of the guy, because it would be quite easy to sort of not believe this is the same person, given the level of injury that this chap was alleging.
We would have expected to see a man on crutches, unable to walk, being helped perhaps through the day. The way that he displayed himself on surveillance footage, he was perfectly fit and well, and the absolute opposite of what he described in his medical evidence.
And the revelations didn't end there.
He'd told his own medical expert that he wasn't able to work and hadn't worked since the day of the accident because of the horrific pain that he was in with his ankle. The surveillance immediately showed Mr. Summers was working.
We managed to film him loading and unloading a vast amount of kitchen units, domestic appliances to and from his vehicle. This involved him climbing in and out of the van. Once again, there was no apparent disability evident in our opinion, and certainly no walking aids being used.
Sean Summers was required to attend regular medical assessments in order to evaluate the level of injury and plan for his future treatment. Surveillance footage, which was recorded on the day of one medical assessment, shows Summers waiting outside the building while his wife fills in a questionnaire. His behaviour is particularly revealing.
Mr. Summers is seen on his crutches, but at one point is sitting on a step, but pushes off from the floor with his injured foot.
Sean Summers kept up the appearance of disability for the duration of the assessment, but as soon as he returned home, things changed.
An hour and a half later, we see Mr. Summers arrive home, shoe back on the injured foot, not using the crutches at all other than carrying him into the house.
Taken as a whole, the surveillance footage appeared to contradict the majority of Sean Summers' claim.
It was quite galling. If it wasn't so serious, it would be humorous. But we knew that this was a man who was claiming substantial damages for injuries that clearly weren't affecting him as badly as he said they were.
With the expectation that he would scale down his claim, the footage was sent to Summers' solicitors. Hearing that he'd been caught on camera seemed to have a dramatic effect.
He attended his general practitioner complaining of an acute stress reaction having been found out by the insurance company.
Eventually, the case reached court. Sean Summers adopted an unusual strategy when the surveillance footage was presented to the court.
Mr. Summers refused to accept that the surveillance evidence was anything other than showing him in a disabled state. At points it got ridiculous that despite the fact we saw him shopping in Tesco's, he said that he still couldn't go shopping.
Although there was strong evidence to suggest exaggeration, the judge was bound by legal precedents.
Even a lying and dishonest claimant was entitled to what was assessed to be the genuine part of his claim.
The judge had no option but to award Sean Summers a payout for his actual accident.
He calculated the claim to be worth in the region of £88,000.
Despite only being paid around 10% of his claim, Sean Summers still walked away with the best part of £90,000. But the defence didn't rest there, and they employed the services of renowned QC William Norris. They felt that the Sean Summers case highlighted an important legal issue.
Because the existing law was that if you claim 100% and even 90% is a fraud, as was the case here, you're still entitled to judgment for the 10%. And we wanted the law changed so the court recognised that it had a power to strike out the whole of the claim as to its entirety.
What they wanted to do was exceptional. They wanted the Supreme Court to change the law so that claimants got the message that if they were dishonest, they wouldn't get a penny.
You've been caught cheating. Your claim is dismissed in its entirety. Don't complain. If you don't like it, next time, just tell the truth.
The case was brought to the Supreme Court, and after a 2-day hearing, it came to a decision.
The Supreme Court heard legal argument and eventually handed judgment down, agreeing with the points that we made on the legal principle that where people use the court process and abuse the court process in a massive attempt to deceive, the entirety of their claim can be struck out.
It was a landmark ruling. From now on, claimants grossly exaggerating their injuries could have their whole claim thrown out of court, leaving them without a penny. The message for anyone who's tempted to inflate their claim is now loud and clear.
If they are the subject of a contempt of court case after the personal injury trial, they will be sent to prison.
So, although the ruling came after the case of Sean Summers, the payout of £88,000 he received may not have gone particularly far, as around £63,000 was deducted for state benefits. Things could have been very different if he tried an alternative approach.
If Mr. Summers had been genuine in his presentation and admitted that he'd tried to go back to work in some capacity, he would have actually never seen the inside of a courtroom. The likelihood is the insurance company would have negotiated settlement and paid him more money than the court eventually awarded.
So Sean Summers' strategy meant that he missed out on a larger amount of compensation, and his actions led to a Supreme Court ruling that has effectively changed the law.
The courts now have the tools available to them to strike out entire claims where claimants have been fraudulent or exaggerated their claim in a massive attempt to deceive.
Thanks to the ruling, people benefiting from exaggerated claims should be a thing of the past and will never again financially benefit from their greed. The police insurance fraud team finds a bundle of cash.
What's that for?
And a spectacular crash by an uninsured driver is caught on CCTV.
When we saw the footage, we thought this was a very strange accident. We don't see accidents like that very often at all.
Businessman Peter Webb ran a company that hired out vintage cars for happy couples on their wedding day. But heartbreak was in store for Webb when the latest addition to his fleet was stolen. He bought a 60-year-old Bentley Mark VI for around £3,700, spent £32,000 on renovations, and then insured it for a whopping £42,000. DC Declan Malone from the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department worked on the case. Suspicions were aroused when he looked into the circumstances of the theft.
Mr. Webb informed the police that his car had been stolen, that it was inside a locked garage, inside a locked compound. The only one that was broken into was the one that his Bentley was supposedly taken from.
In addition, the theft had occurred just 2 months after the car had been insured. And when the insurance company requested further information about the restoration, alarm bells began to ring.
They required some photographs of the stages of renovation work, which would only be natural to have been taken. He said that unfortunately for him, that wasn't possible as all the photographs were in the boot of the car at the time that it was stolen. He was also asked to supply invoices for the renovation work that had been carried out, and he said unfortunately they were also in the boot of the car at the time that it was stolen.
The insurance company strongly suspected fraud and were querying the claim. Curiously, this appeared to jog Peter Webb's memory.
He then remembered that he'd managed to have some of the photographs captured on one of the computers that he'd given to one of his grandchildren, and he supplied those photographs to the insurance company.
But these images painted a different picture and confirmed that there was something seriously suspicious about the claim.
One of the photographs that he'd supplied was a direct lift from the website of a Bentley dealership.
He tried to pretend a photo of a pristine vintage Bentley he'd found on a website was a picture of his car. The insurance company immediately passed the case to the police. As part of the investigation, IFED went to the mechanic who'd recently performed an MOT on the car.
He said that the car that he MOT'd was in a tatty state, is how he described it. He didn't think that it was the same vehicle.
In addition, investigations revealed that the man who was said to have performed the extensive renovation work had since died and would have been far too ill to do the job. DC Declan Malone then asked renowned Bentley expert Ken Lee to look at the other photographs, and yet more inconsistencies were revealed.
We thought that the car in the photograph was a later dated car than the one that he purported to own. I think his was built in 1949 and the car in the photograph was 1952. And it's between 1950 and 1952 that the engine changed and the exhaust system changed, and that was the first giveaway. He unfortunately picked a car which was very different in its individual features from the one that he actually owned.
The car Peter Webb owned and the car in the photos were completely different. He'd pilfered pictures from the internet to pass off his shabby old banger as a pristine restoration job. He was hoping to collect £42,000 for a car worth a fraction of that price. But the most important piece of evidence was still to come. The truth behind the other photo revealed just how far he'd been prepared to go with his fraud.
Mr. Webb had taken out a Bentley from a Bentley dealership for a test drive. He'd been allowed to use the vehicle for about half an hour, during which time he fitted it with false plates and had photographs taken.
He then supplied the photo to the insurance company, claiming it was of his own car. By now, IFED had overwhelming evidence of fraud, and the case proceeded to court.
Initially, he pleaded not guilty, and it wasn't until right up until the day before the trial that he actually pleaded guilty. Mr. Webb was fined £10,000 or to pay £1,375 in compensation to the insurance company, £1,000 costs, plus a £15 victim surcharge. If Mr. Webb defaults on the £10,000 fine, he's been given 6 months imprisonment.
Despite going to some effort to provide fake photos, Peter Webb was unable to cheat his way to a fraudulent payout and has ended up with a criminal record and a huge fine. Combating the ever-increasing threat of insurance fraud is an elite police squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
The primary aim of IFED is to start taking disruptive action against those criminals who are intent on committing crime in relation to insurance. It's that defrauding that is raising the premium from everyone in this country.
They've made over 300 arrests and have saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back into our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
We'll do intelligence gathering, sometimes surveillance on individuals, sometimes a lot of detailed research in the background. We'll decide when the time is right to take down people, and that means often execute search warrants where necessary. We'll force entry into premises if we think evidence could be lost. In only 18 months, we've arrested over 300 people. We will start to see a reduction in the insurance fraud in this country, which is ultimately what we're aiming for. It's highly likely now, if you commit any insurance fraud, you will get caught.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
At At any one time, IFED's officers are juggling multiple ongoing investigations. Another one of DC Declan Malone's cases has reached the point where the team is ready to stage a raid. He believes that a specific traffic incident relates to a suspected motor insurance fraud. DC Malone and the team have hit the road early, so they can pay a visit to the man at the centre of the case.
Going to the home address of a taxi driver who was carrying 5 juveniles when he, we believe, induced an accident whereby he slammed on his brakes and a marked police vehicle went into the rear of him.
After the accident, claims for personal injury were then allegedly made on behalf of the juveniles who'd been in the taxi, but without their permission or the permission of their parents. The suspicion is that a third party was potentially fraudulently making the claims with the intention of lining their own pockets. Other raids are taking place simultaneously, which are focused on third-party suspects believed to be connected to the potential fraud.
So we're going along now this morning to see if we can arrest this guy and see what he's got to say.
The team has also obtained a warrant so they can search his house.
Today we're looking for evidence of association to see if he's got connections either with the other individuals that are being arrested elsewhere and also claims management company.
The IFED team never knows what lies in store on a raid, so today the local police force is providing backup. They gather outside the house, taking care to cover all possible exits. Suspects have been known to flee or try and destroy evidence, so it's important to try and minimise the chance of this happening.
Good morning, we're police officers. Is Mr. please?
Yes, it's me.
I need to talk to him. Could you make him up for me, please?
Come on.
Is that okay? Can we come in?
It's early in the morning, and the suspect is just getting up. He's immediately arrested.
I understand that. So the time by my watch is now 2 minutes past 7. So if you just put on your trousers, but I need to watch it.
Yeah.
So once you get dressed, we'll explain the rest to you, all right?
Yeah.
With the suspect located and detained within minutes, it's been a successful start to the raid. But the team needs to get the search underway as soon as possible.
If you tell us where your paperwork is what we're looking for.
Sorry?
Your paperwork, any insurance documents or anything like that.
It's much simpler and quicker if the suspect cooperates, but he initially seems hesitant.
All right, no problem. We'll search the whole place.
No. The papers are in. I will look in if you can find anything which you are looking for.
Yeah.
In there, anything.
Before being taken away for further questioning at a local police station, the suspect is asked to empty his pockets of anything he doesn't need.
Walk in.
Yeah.
It turns out he's carrying a huge bundle of cash.
We've found £1,000 in cash. We've spoken with the person who's been arrested.
The IFED team decides not to look into the money there and then, preferring to investigate it at a later date.
At this moment in time, because you're arrested, we're going to take you to the police station while we are here searching the premises. Anything we take, we'll record down and we'll leave a receipt here with you.
Yeah, no.
If we'll take him away then,
Okay.
we'll conduct our search, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Finally, the suspect is on his way. He'll be questioned at a local police station, and the interview will form an important part of the investigation. Meanwhile, the search gets underway in earnest inside the property. The team don protected gloves so that they don't contaminate any potential evidence.
Okay, gentlemen, we know what we're looking for, yeah?
Yeah.
Any sort of documentation.
All right, we'll start upstairs then. Okay.
We're looking for things that associate him with the accident that we're investigating. We're also looking for articles that will associate him with the others who have been arrested. Diaries, hopefully, telephones, storage devices that may have the other suspects' details on them as well. We may have sketch plans of accidents that have been induced, and anything really that may link him with that type of lifestyle. That's the vehicle that was involved in.
DC Declan Malone immediately makes a useful discovery.
Yeah, I've just found a DVLA form, which is the taxi that was involved in the collision. It's a copy of that, which ties him into the vehicle.
It's important to back up the case with supporting documentation. There's also a copy of a report made to the local council about the accident at the centre of the case.
It ties him in with the occurrence that we're investigating. There's nothing on its own that's going to hang it. He obviously, if he maintains his story, that it was a genuine accident, that's the kind of thing that we would expect to see.
It seems that this isn't the first personal injury claim connected to the suspect.
It's only a previous claim that he'd made for personal injury, but he hadn't pursued.
The vehicle at the centre of the case is parked outside the residence, and it's not long before it too yields possible evidence.
We're actually looking for documentation from insurance companies. We're also looking for mobile phones which may contain evidence. And as you can see, there's 2 in the glove box of this vehicle.
It's just a handwritten letter describing an accident where a cyclist rode into a car. It forms part of the investigation and might lead to further inquiries that need to be investigated at a later date.
Back inside, there's further potential evidence that the suspect has been involved in previous insurance claims.
Yeah, we've got a few bits and pieces that obviously tie him in, into the vehicle, and we've got some other documentation that we found where the vehicle has been involved in a previous similar accident that it would seem as though it's been paid out for.
It's just reference another road traffic collision that happened. It looks like he's a witness to it. So it may be nothing, but it's obviously another road traffic collision around the similar sort of time to the road traffic collision that we were looking at. And we'll be able to find the paperwork for it and check and see exactly what it was all about.
IFED is turning up evidence of a number of previous collisions. The information will be fed into the investigation to see how it fits into the bigger picture. DC Malone then finds something concerning the suspect's financial situation.
Indicates the amount of debt that he's in, really.
The search is drawing to a close, and DC Declan Malone reflects on how the raid has gone.
We managed to arrest the person that we were after. We've conducted a search of his home address. We've come up with some documentation that links him to the vehicle that was involved in the report-induced collision. We've also got some documentation that shows that that vehicle was involved in other collisions previously. We'll just see what he's got to say. With regard to the accident, he'll be bailed after we've interviewed him, and he'll be interviewed on another occasion when all the available evidence will be put to him.
It's been a long day, but the search has turned up a variety of potential evidence. IFED is determined to win the fight against fraud, and will do whatever it takes to stop criminals whose greed adds to the rising cost of insurance policies, an offence that costs all of us money and endangers the lives of innocent road users. Claims handlers in the next case were immediately alerted by the short space of time between motor insurance being taken out and a claim being made. Richard Davies is head of fraud at AXA UK.
We first heard about the policy around about 20 to 4 on the 24th of November, so less than 12 hours afterwards we had an accident reported to us. When we've got a small gap between a policy being taken out and a claim being reported, it often rings alarm bells inside an insurer.
As part of the claims procedure, the policyholder was asked to describe the accident.
They clipped the wing mirrors of another car that they were passing, and then in reversing back to talk to the person they'd had an accident with, they collided with another vehicle, and that had caused the vehicle to roll over.
It was a serious accident that had caused a lot of expensive damage to several vehicles. The investigation into the claim revealed further cause for concern.
The credit card payment which we took to pay for the policy bounced.
It was then that the insurer was alerted to a piece of evidence which blew apart the claimant's story: CCTV.
When we saw the footage, we thought this was a very strange accident. We don't see accidents like that very often at all. The CCTV footage actually came from the third party whose vehicle had been damaged as our policyholder reversed back into them. They worked in an education institution which had CCTV cameras at the doors, and the timestamps on that film told us when and where the accident actually occurred.
The accident had been reported to the insurer on the 25th of November. The claimant said the accident had happened the day before, on the 24th of November at 3:45, just 5 minutes after the policy had been taken out at 3:40. However, the CCTV told a different story.
The timestamp on that said the accident took place at 3:15 on the 24th of November. So in essence, the accident has taken place before the policy existed.
The next step was for the company to go back to the claimant with the CCTV evidence.
When we challenged the policyholder about this, they failed to respond to any of the questions that we asked them. We sent her a questionnaire and we've yet to receive any response.
Needless to say, the insurers didn't pay out on the policy.
This was a really bold attempt at insurance fraud. The policyholder knew they didn't have a policy. They took it out knowing that they were going to submit a claim, and we're very lucky to have caught them at it.
Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
The subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled dedicated police units.
Stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act. And claim and shame. Today, a country pub goes up in smoke and things get heated for a pair of fire-starting fraudsters.
It showed Dean and Melinda looking for the bag that we had recovered, and a most unusual response to that, almost hysterical.
The Specialist Police Unit IFED shuts down a gang of motor insurance fraudsters.
I don't think they expected to get caught so quickly, but ultimately most fraudsters will get caught.
And the conman's elaborate stag do cover story starts to unravel.
Despite travelling to Edinburgh for a stag weekend, there's no luggage whatsoever in the minibus.
In July 2011, a huge fire broke out at the Toll House pub in Lymington in New Forest. The flames spread rapidly, cutting off people trapped on the upper floor. The emergency services were called to what had quickly become a life or death situation. Justin Norris is from Hampshire Police.
The fire was in the early hours of the morning, and we attended the scene within 5 minutes of the call from Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service.
With the fire threatening to rage out of control, the first priority was to get everyone out safely. Duncan White is a crew manager with Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service who attended the scene.
It was a very severe fire. You could see why the people were trapped in the upstairs rooms. The fire in the stairwell was the reason why the people were trapped at the first floor, because it compromised their means of escape.
At great risk to their own safety, the fire officers entered the building and managed to get everyone out, undoubtedly saving their lives. According to the emergency call from Dean and Melinda Thomas, who owned the pub, the devastating blaze was the result of foul play.
They suspected a burglary or somebody who tried to break into their premises. We started to treat it as a scene of a crime.
The fire was so intense, it was a miracle that no one had been seriously hurt.
The whole pub was completely 100% smoke damaged.
With the blaze finally out, the police began their investigation by talking to the owners about the events of that night, in particular the suspected burglary.
Dean had been awoken, had come downstairs, having heard a noise of smashing glass, looked around the premises, didn't find anything to start with, went back upstairs. Within half an hour, the fire alarms had gone off. He then alerted the rest of the people in the house, and he discovered a fire downstairs.
Dean Thomas believed that the burglar was after the pub's takings.
He reported that some money had been stolen from downstairs and that they had tried to cover their tracks by causing this fire.
However, there was a fundamental problem with his version of events.
It's highly unusual for a burglar to break into a premise and to set fire to it without any other motive or reason to do so.
Dean's story simply didn't ring true, and suspicions were immediately aroused. The police examined the scene of the fire for further evidence, starting with the smashed window, which, according to Dean, was the burglar's entry point.
You couldn't have possibly got into the premises without disturbing the glass fragments on this windowsill. They weren't disturbed at all.
Their next discovery threw even more doubt on Dean's story.
We found a petrol can that was recovered from in an outhouse that had been concealed behind some items, behind a case, which was unusual as well.
This tied in with evidence from the fire officers who'd fought the blaze.
In a normal domestic fire, it's a grey smoke, but this was a very black smoke.
The colour of the smoke and the discovery of the hidden petrol can seemed to indicate that the fire had been fuelled by an accelerant such as petrol. Dean's story was unravelling fast, and the police looked into the couple's finances as a possible motivation for arson.
It became really apparent quite quickly that Thomases were in significant debt.
Evidence was mounting on all sides that the fire had been deliberately started by the Thomases for an insurance payout, but conclusive proof was lacking until a chance discovery in the grounds of the property.
We recover a bag of clothing. We don't know whose clothing this is, but we discover it's outer clothing, sort of tracksuit bottoms and a top, and some domestic gloves. We didn't know why it was there, we didn't know whose it was, but we suspected it was something to do with the fire.
Sensing a chance to catch the culprits red-handed, the police set up surveillance of the area with a hidden camera.
We thought that whoever put the bag there might come back to the scene to try and recover it, to dispose of it, because we believed at the time this was the bag of clothing that had been used to start the fire.
Unlike fraudsters, the camera never lies, and the surveillance footage meant that Dean Thomas's story went up in smoke.
It showed Dean and Melinda looking for the bag that we had recovered, and a most unusual response to that. Almost hysterical. It looks like they're arguing about it, and Melinda is throwing her arms around a little bit as well.
Melinda was confronted by the police, and even then the lies continued.
She said in an interview to us that the reason why she reacted that way was because she believed police officers had disturbed the grave of her dog.
But she convinced no one, and it was obvious that her hysterical response was because she knew they'd been found out. The fire had been started deliberately, and they hadn't done a very good job of covering their tracks.
It was quite clear that the motive was financial. They had wanted to get out of the contract with the brewery, whose premise as it was, and already done that, already asked to do that prior to the fire taking place.
The case eventually reached court, but despite the weight of evidence against them, unbelievably, the couple maintained their innocence.
During the trial, they pleaded not guilty, and it was a jury that convicted them. Dean Thomas was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and Melinda Thomas was sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Not only had they been driven by greed, but worse, they'd endangered the lives of the people in the pub and the firefighters who put out the fire. The heavy sentences reflected the seriousness of their crime.
Unfortunately for them, unfortunately for everyone else, the truth came out and we found out what happened in the end.
A fraud fraud gang is scuppered after making an outrageous claim.
To put a claim in on a vehicle that they were driving and or involved with that did not have damage consistent to what's been portrayed is rather foolish.
And its insurance company in one corner, fake Olympic boxer in the other.
It's not untypical of insurance fraudsters to have aliases. I guess what's surprising in this case is that he sought to bring such attention to himself.
Combating the ever-increasing threat of insurance fraud is an elite police squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
IFED is a 35-strong unit that works tirelessly to hunt down and prosecute insurance fraudsters wherever they may be throughout England and Wales.
From now on, fraudsters need to watch their back.
In only 18 months, we've arrested over 300 people. We will start to see a reduction in the insurance fraud in this country, which is ultimately what we're aiming for. It's highly likely now, if you commit any insurance fraud, you will get caught.
In 2012, IFED travelled to Torquay to carry out a raid on a gang of fraudsters believed to be behind various multi-vehicle accidents. The collisions were staged in order to cash in on motor insurance policies. It all started with a seemingly innocuous accident in 2009. Mike Brown from Direct Line was on the case.
The accident in 2009 involved 3 vehicles. One was driven by Mr Baker, a second vehicle driven by Mr Cash, and a third vehicle driven by Miss Shears. Mr Baker lost control of his vehicle and collided with the 2 vehicles driven by Miss Shears and Mr Cash.
At that stage, there was nothing to suggest fraud.
No suspicious circumstances surrounding that claim. It entered the claims process and the claims were eventually settled for all 3 vehicles.
DC Kate Sibley from IFED also worked on the case.
Claims were going in for personal injury, damage to cars, damage to property within the cars, loss of earnings, hire vehicles, whatever basically they could put a claim in for, they were putting a claim in.
In total, all 3 claims were settled for approximately £15,000.
And there the matter would have rested, had it not been for another accident 2 years later. Striking similarities to the claim from 2009 led to an investigation being launched.
Mr Baker appeared to be the offending driver on both occasions. There was 3 vehicles again involved. All parties knew each other, raised concerns.
All those involved in the accidents were linked and alarm bells started to ring. The cars from the second accident were then examined by an expert employed by the insurers.
The crash investigator basically said how they're saying the accident happened didn't match up with the damage to the vehicles. So in his opinion, it was unlikely that it actually took place.
To put a claim in on a vehicle that they were driving and or involved with that did not have damage consistent to what's being portrayed is rather foolish.
They made a big mistake, and this alerted the insurers to other aspects of the claim which raised suspicions, not least the huge amount of money involved.
In total, £80,000 was the amount of claims that would have been paid if we had not have intervened.
That intervention came in the form of an early morning IFED raid. The team started with a visit to Jonathan Baker, the man who'd driven into the back of the other vehicles in both the accidents. It was 6:30 in the morning when the IFED team arrived at the address. The father of the suspect came out to meet them and wanted to know what was going on.
I'm from the City of London Police. It's my ID, sir. We're looking for Mr. Jonathan Baker.
What's this for?
We want to speak to him in connection to an insurance fraud that we believe he's involved in. That's all the detail I can give you, sir.
Right.
Okay. I can speak to him more about it, but I can't yourself. I take it you are, sorry, you're his father?
I'm father, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
he is.
He's in bed and he doesn't need to be disturbed.
Well, we need to speak to him, sir.
He revealed that his son was in, and Baker eventually came to talk to IFED.
I understand you're off work at the moment.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, we need to speak to you today. Okay. We need to take you to Torquay and interview you in relation to a matter that's been referred to us.
Right.
In relation to what we suspect is insurance fraud dating back to January of last year.
Right, okay.
Okay. That's it, basically.
Yeah, Jonathan Baker, you're under arrest, 7 o'clock, okay? You have Sally man, if not mentioned any question. Subject to unimportant. If you could do some accurate evidence, okay?
He was taken down to the local police station for further questioning.
All right, mate, just take a seat in there behind the passenger seat, please.
While the IFED team was travelling to their next raid location, they got some good news from the station.
He's just been booked in and just been put in a cell. He just came out with it, indicated that he knew what it was all about and said that he didn't see any point in lying about any involvement. So I don't know what he's going to say on the interview. We obviously didn't question him any further. But he asked if we were picking up any of the others that were involved, was his exact words. So what exactly that means, I don't know.
It was the breakthrough the case needed. Although the raid had started well, there were still 2 crucial arrests to make, and the team had to stay focused. When they arrived at the next address, they immediately knew they were at the right place, because parked outside was a vehicle that was central to the case.
Oh, his car's there. That Mazda is pretty much what it's all about.
There's a bright green Mazda RX-7, which had been modified at the garage. It won numerous awards for the modifications to it and was on the front of several magazines.
The car belonged to Carter Oram, the man involved in the second crash. IFED believed that this had been deliberately staged to fund expensive modification work on his Mazda. Despite the presence of his car, the suspect believed to be at the second location wasn't Carter Oram. It was a man thought to have allowed his details to be used for one of the fraudulent insurance claims. The team secured the exits and prepared to enter through the main door. After they'd identified themselves, the suspect cooperated by letting them in.
Firstly, okay, I need to speak to you today regarding an allegation that's been made where it's alleged that you're involved in a conspiracy to defraud insurance companies. All right, hear me out, yeah? Okay, so in relation to that offence and that allegation, I'm arresting you on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud, and we'll be looking to interview you later on this morning.
Although he wasn't one of the ringleaders, a search of the property revealed that he was involved in more than just suspected insurance fraud.
A number of things were seized there, including the cultivation of cannabis, which the local police dealt with.
How many plants you got? 9. I'm further arresting you on suspicion of cultivation of cannabis.
I'm proper scared now.
It's all right.
I don't like dealing with people on the street. I smoke weed, I've got my own bombs. I just sit in here and smoke weed.
The team then moved on to the final and most important location, a garage called Shell Shocked, which was linked to all the suspects and all the cars.
When we delved deeper into the second claim in 2011, it became apparent that Shell Shocked were clearly involved in some form of fraudulent activity.
The whole fraud centred around this main garage, Shell Shocked, and all the vehicles either were from there or passed through there, but were borrowed and used in the contrived accidents and then done up and returned to their rightful owners or paid for by the insurance companies to be repaired.
Shell Shocked was owned by Carter Oram, the owner of the Mazda, and Richard Cash. Both of these men were directly involved in the induced collisions. And it was here that the IFED team hoped to apprehend their final suspect, Carter Oram.
Mr. Jared, hello mate. I'm Mark Fraudster from the City London Police, okay, Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
Right.
Okay. I need to speak to you about an allegation that's been made, okay, where the allegation is that you have conspired with others to defraud the insurance company, all right, namely the RBS, all right? So in relation to that, okay, I'm going to have to arrest you, okay? You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. Okay. Anything you do say may be given evidence. And that's in relation, like I say, conspiracy to defraud, okay? We'll have to take you away now, okay? Is your boss here, or are you in charge, or whatever?
I'm in charge, yeah.
Their hunch that he'd be at work paid off, and he was taken away for further questioning.
Right, let's stick you in the cage, mate. I'm going to take you back to Torquay. All right, jump in.
The team have made 3 arrests and recovered a wealth of evidence, but the complexity of the fraud meant that there were still people to track down.
The other suspects were arrested later on in Devon, and one suspect attended Bishopsgate Police Station voluntarily.
IFED's swift action ensured that the scam was shut down before the fraud could get any bigger. By April 2013, IFED had collected enough evidence to bring the main players to justice. Baker was sent down for 6 months, and Richard Cash for 14. Carter Oram received a 6-month jail term suspended for 12 months. Jennifer Shears, for her involvement in the first crash, was handed a 2-month prison sentence, suspended for 12 months.
Direct line groups as a zero tolerance to fraudulent insurance activity. I don't think they expected to get caught so quickly, but ultimately most fraudsters will get caught.
In 2012, Olympic fever was everywhere. For athletes who'd been chosen to represent their countries, this was the fulfilment of a long-held ambition. This was especially true for one young Afghani man living in West London. Against all the odds, Daz Siddiqui had made the Afghan boxing squad, and his inspirational story was starting to gain attention. In an article in The Sun, he was quoted as saying, "I know I won't be one of the favourites to win a medal, but being a competitor at the 2012 Olympics seemed just an impossible dream." He was right, but not in the way he intended. The whole thing was a total fabrication. Siddiqui was actually a serial fraudster and fantasist. Tom Gardner from Aviva worked on the case.
It's not untypical of insurance fraudsters to have aliases. I guess what's surprising in this case is that he sought to bring such attention to himself.
In truth, Daz Siddiqui was a conman who lived in a fantasy world. He'd invented multiple personas to cheat money out of insurance companies, but his lies were uncovered by Aviva's fraud detection team, who spotted a number of suspicious claims.
We were able to identify matches between addresses and bank accounts, which originally alerted us to the fraud. And as we investigated that further, we were able to unravel the full scale of his fraud.
He'd set up a web of fake identities.
Majid Siddiqui went by a number of aliases, including Daz Siddiq, Owen Hart, and Kevin Heartbreak.
But Siddiqui's fraud went much further than just inventing fake names. DC John Herlihy from the City of London's Police Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department also worked on the case.
He tried to cover his tracks to some extent by changing his name regularly by deed poll. In a 2-year period, he had anything up to 6 to 8 names. In fact, I imagine that he has got one name that he keeps to himself, but he's been known by so many different names that perhaps only he will ever know what his real name is.
But he didn't stop at fake identities. His financial arrangements revealed a web of lies too.
In total, we were able to identify 23 bank accounts. The bank accounts were used in the first place to obtain insurance under bogus names and addresses, and then also later to receive payments from claims.
Siddiqui was committing fraud on a massive scale.
So in total, we're aware of 46 claims which were presented for bogus injuries, which on a full liability basis would have had a value of about £500,000.
Siddiqui's fraudulent claims primarily involved car accidents that had never happened, with multiple occupants who never existed. He would then claim for car repair costs and personal injury compensation.
Mr. Siddiqui was not terribly sophisticated. He created a company that handled all these claims, but foolishly or otherwise, claimed that company was storing the vehicles, and he would also make personal injury claims and rent vehicles. And so to people who've worked in insurance fraud for a number of years, these things stick out.
Once they'd collected all the evidence they could, the insurers handed over their findings to IFED to take the investigation to the next stage.
There's some things they can't do and that police officers have to do, including tracing him through his bank accounts and through names and aliases that he'd given. Once we'd traced all these activities and put them together through mobile phone records and bank account details, it was just really a question of catching him in and making sure that he was caught red-handed, as the expression goes.
By now, there was enough evidence to move in and arrest him.
On the day of the raid, when we went in, he was watching the TV. And one of the things that was strangest to us is that amongst his various aliases and his various guises, he'd said that he was an Olympic boxer. And he was actually watching the Olympics when we came in, but it was the rowing. So we asked him about that. You know, aren't you supposed to be boxing for the country? And he said, oh yes, he'd injured himself. So he couldn't even be straight with us at that stage, even there standing in his pants.
The IFED team was able to collect a wealth of evidence.
Surrounding him were the tools of his trade. He had mobile phones with post-it notes on them. in all the different names, so that if that phone went off, he'd instantly know who he was supposed to be.
With so many personas, it was hard for Siddiqui to keep track of who had put in what claim. The case proceeded to court, and Siddiqui was brought to justice.
He was charged with 11 counts of false representation under the Fraud Act and also 1 count of holding a fake national ID card.
Perhaps realising that for once he should tell the truth, Siddiqui pleaded guilty.
He got 18 months, which, considering he'd spent 2 years actually doing the crimes, he had at least 18 months to regret it.
His elaborate fantasy existence had finally been brought to an end, and he had no one to blame but himself, whoever that was.
I do wonder at the end of it, who actually knows the real Daz Siddiqui?
Things you expect on a stag night. To get a bit drunk, and maybe round the evening off with a sing-song. One thing you don't expect is Whiplash, but that's just what happened on Stephen Paul's stag do. The party had barely left Newcastle before festivities came to an abrupt halt, thanks to their minibus hitting a car. Aviva's Tom Gardner was yet again on the case and investigated the claim.
Mr. Paul took out a new policy with us to insure his minibus and then contacted us several weeks later to report that he'd been in a collision with another vehicle.
Elaine Ibbotson worked for the insurer's solicitors.
It was suggested that there were a group of 14 men on their way to a stag party in Edinburgh. They were travelling in the minibus, and it was alleged that shortly after starting their journey, the minibus driver had left the main road north and had pulled off, I think, to visit a shop. Shortly after leaving the main road on the approach to a roundabout, it was alleged that the minibus collided with the rear of a car.
I believe 6 ambulances attended the scene. All of the people were treated at hospital.
The accident resulted in multiple injuries, primarily whiplash. It wasn't long before the insurers heard from the would-be partygoers on the minibus.
In total, 15 claims were presented for whiplash injuries, which on a full liability basis at the time would be potentially worth over £100,000.
Because it was such a huge sum of money, the team began to look more closely at the claim. And what they found called the whole stag party story into question.
In the first place, just the number and severity of the injuries proportionate to the accident. In the second place, that the accident happened so soon after a new policy was taken out.
There's always an element of suspicion when every single occupant of both vehicles involved in a collision claims to have sustained almost identical injuries. It wasn't a huge impact one way you'd expect every single person to have been injured.
The lawyers decided to talk to all the main players and immediately encountered inconsistencies. The main claimant kept changing small details in his story.
His account really didn't ring true at all.
And there were also concerns from the police officers who had attended the accident.
Quite clearly they felt something wasn't right with the situation as they arrived at the scene.
The investigation continued and a vehicle assessor was sent to look at the damaged minibus.
One of the things that our engineers observed when they inspected the minibus was that some of the damage appeared quite old.
Serious questions were now being asked, not least why the men had set off for a meet-up with no spare clothes.
It also emerged that despite travelling to Edinburgh for a stag weekend, there was no luggage whatsoever in the minibus.
Piece by piece, the evidence was stacking up. Their story was falling apart. It seemed that the group had conspired to create a bogus accident so they could submit a massive insurance claim. The investigation was then widened to include those travelling in the car.
It became apparent that there were connections between the occupants of the two vehicles that were identified through social networking websites.
The confirmation that they knew each other was telling, but the final straw was a CCTV clip of the crash site, which showed that the accident had never occurred.
What we believe happened is that the two vehicles were damaged away from the scene, and then the accident was staged at some point and debris put onto the road to create the impression that an accident had occurred.
The stag weekend in Edinburgh had been invented as a cover story for an audacious con trick, but it had all fallen apart like a late-night kebab. By now, there was enough evidence to take the culprits to court.
15 of the 16 people pleaded guilty and received suspended sentences. One person pleaded not guilty and he was tried by jury and later convicted.
The party was well and truly over for the stag do, and the only cause for celebration was that time had been called on a massive insurance scam. Reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
Subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled dedicated police units.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claim and shame. High-speed tangle leads to an opportunistic fraud attempt.
There was no question, and the CCTV footage proved it.
A specialist police force challenges their suspect.
From what you say, we're not going to see anything in this car, right?
And an insurer discovers where £1 million worth of fraudulent cash has gone.
We were quite shocked.
What's going on here? Smashed up cars, police, dozens of onlookers. It's chaos. That's because the police car and the small hatchback have just been involved in a severe collision on this busy North London High Street.
The accident occurred on the 21st of February 2011 in Green Lanes in Haringey, very busy road. The aftermath of the accident was quite chaotic. There were lots of people milling around. The fire engines are there, the ambulance is there treating some of the injured parties. And what we can see is that there are 3 vehicles that have been damaged in that impact.
The third vehicle involved in the crash is the large black saloon car. It was sat in the parking bay at the time of the collision. The small hatchback ploughed into it after tangling with the police car. Amongst the carnage, the car's driver in the white hooded top can be seen inspecting his mangled motor. He then wanders over to talk to a police officer.
The person that's parked the vehicle at the roadside clearly approaches the police in the footage, and one can assume that they're asking about when their vehicle can actually be moved away from the crash.
He's not just worried about the vehicle. He was in the stationary car at the time of the incident. He also had a passenger with him, seen wandering around the wreckage. The 2 men, Mehmet Ali Gul and Turan Korkmaz, suffered injuries as a result of the whack. Soon after the incident, Gul and Korkmaz both submitted personal injury claims against the insurance of the hatchback driver who was supposedly at fault.
We had claims for whiplash injury and also for treatment for physiotherapy that they'd had as a result of the accident. The 2 claims that we had for the alleged people in the vehicle amounted to £2,147 apiece.
In total, the insurer was facing a £4,294 bill. The paperwork began. But this was no ordinary claim. It involved a police vehicle, and because of that, the claims process hit a problem.
We needed to make some further inquiries. Specific allegations had been made regarding the fact that the car hadn't been using its blues and twos.
Blues and twos is industry speak for lights and siren. If the police car hadn't been using its blues and twos, arguments on liability for the crash could have taken place. The insurer had to check the allegation. They contacted Haringey Council, as they had a CCTV camera positioned near the crash site, which captured the whole event. If the police car had been travelling at speed without its blues and twos on, the footage would tell them. When the insurer watched the footage, this is what it saw.
Very busy road, lots of buses around, lots of people milling around. In the distance, you can actually see a police vehicle approaching. It was quite evident that the lights were on.
The allegation that the police car didn't have its blues and twos on was wrong. The CCTV captures the whole event perfectly. The driver of the hatchback seemed to be at fault. Currently hidden behind the white van, the hatchback is about to cause mayhem.
Unfortunately, there's a collision between our policyholder and the police vehicle. The subsequent impact that happens with the parked vehicle is significant.
The insurer of the small hatchback would have to pay up for the whiplash injuries suffered by Gull and Korkmaz, who were about to get out of the stationary car. They're probably a bit shocked. They'll be out in a moment. Any second now. No, they won't. And that's because...
When you study the CCTV footage, it's evident that the two claimants are nowhere near the vehicle at the time that the incident happened.
Turan Korkmaz and Mehmet Ali Gull first arrive on scene 2 minutes after the crash. There's the driver jogging up the road towards his bashed-up motor, followed by his pretend passenger. Both whiplash claims have been opportunistic attempts to make money out of a life-threatening event.
You see them approaching from quite a considerable distance away. There is absolutely no way that those two men could have been in the car at the time of the crash. There was no question. The CCTV footage proved it.
Korkmaz and Gull weren't going to get away with a free shot at the insurer.
When we repudiated the claims, we decided it was time to report it to the police so that they could consider a prosecution.
The footage was conclusive evidence. Both Turan Korkmaz and Mehmet Ali Gull received a 3-month suspended sentence and 120 hours community service.
I think it would be quite surprising to any fraudster as to the technology and the pooling of resources that is now happening within the insurance industry to actually make sure that these fraudulent claims come to an end. Fraudulent claims like this are obviously costing the honest policyholder around £50 on their premium every single year. The industry, insurers, the police are all working together to try and make sure that these people are prosecuted where necessary and brought to justice.
Fraudulent couple's jet-set lifestyle gives the game away.
The couple spend an awful lot of time going on holiday, going to the airport.
And the owner of a pink limo won't back down on price.
The vehicle was quite a tatty vehicle, actually.
CCTV has proven indispensable in the fight against insurance fraud. But there are times when more unlikely methods uncover the scammers. This is Miss Jackson, a single mother, who back in 2009 was doing her best to make ends meet by holding down a full-time job whilst also looking after 2 kids. Britain has 2 million single-parent families. Bringing up a child on your own can be tough, not least of all financially. Luckily, there's help at hand in the form of tax credits.
Tax credits, pension credits and benefits in general are designed for those who are really in need of financial help to top up the earnings of someone who is on a low income or with childcare costs.
Miss Jackson, despite her efforts, relied upon the help of the tax credit system.
Miss Jackson was claiming to be a single mother on a very low income of around £6,000 a year. She was claiming that she was working full-time, and in addition to that, she had high childcare costs.
Money was tight for the full-time working mum, but the tax credit system would help keep their heads above water. In order to make sure that tax credits are reaching the people who need them most, HMRC do regular random checks on tax credit recipients. In 2009, Miss Jackson's name came up for one such check.
Her tax credits claim was selected for a routine examination by a tax credits inspector.
During this routine examination, the inspectors made some surprising discoveries about the financially stretched single mum. It turned out she wasn't single. She was still living with the father of her children, Gajik Manucharian. The HMRC inspectors felt there was more to be discovered.
We put the couple under covert surveillance for around 3 months. This established that the couple spent an awful lot of time shopping and going on holiday and going to the airport.
Not the usual movements of a hard-up parent receiving tax credits. What was going on? HMRC were determined to get to the bottom of it.
There came a time where we decided that we had to resort to traditional techniques, and we obtained a warrant. We went through the front door early one morning in October 2009 and arrested the suspects.
So what did HMRC discover from the raid of Jackson and Manucharian's address?
The couple were living quite an extravagant lifestyle.
The couple lived in this. They drove a couple of these. And they did indeed enjoy the odd holiday.
We discovered that Miss Jackson had a lifestyle well beyond what her declared means were. She'd recently purchased a property for around £365,000 with £150,000 going down as a deposit on it. In addition to that, she'd recently taken out a loan on a £56,000 Mercedes motor car. They spent a lot of time on holiday at locations across the world.
The couple had been enjoying the kind of luxuries that are out of reach of most tax credit recipients. Over a 3-year period, they'd spent a lot of the taxpayers' money.
Between 2006 and 2009, Jackson was able to obtain £56,000 in tax credits. Additionally to that, via her Latvian mother, she set up a fraudulent claim to generate £27,000 in pension credits and winter fuel payments.
That makes a total of £83,000 in benefits fraudulently obtained from HMRC. But the figures didn't add up. The house alone was worth 4 times as much as that. Where were the fraudsters getting the rest of the money from? Bank statements seized during the raid held a clue.
The couple were receiving significant amounts of cash deposits into their account from locations all over the UK.
It was discovered that there were deposits linked to payments to a large insurer. Looking for specialist help, HMRC invited the insurer to aid in the investigation.
I think when HMRC found this information, they knew that they were onto some other type of fraud that this couple were involved in, but I don't think they really understood the full extent of the sort of criminal activity that Jackson and Manucharian had been undertaking in the insurance industry.
Jackson and Manucharian had been running an illegal insurance racket, a criminal practice known as ghost broking. Ghost broking is a term used for an illicit insurance broker who falsifies details to take out bogus insurance policies on behalf of drivers. If involved in an accident, their innocent customers could find that they don't have valid insurance. Jackson and Manucharian were ghost broking on a massive scale.
When we started to uncover the size of the fraud that had taken place, we were quite shocked.
In total, the couple had sold over 1,500 policies, leaving in their wake hundreds of customers without valid insurance.
We really realised what we were dealing with when we had to print out 30,000 pages of documentation to cover the extent of the fraud that Jackson and Manucharian had been committing just with the Direct Line Group, let alone any of the other insurers that they'd also been placing illegal policies with. And also the point where we had to set up special call lines to deal with the impact that they'd had on innocent victims.
After 3 years of fleecing innocent customers, the couple had made almost £1 million from their illegal insurance business. Add to that the £82,000 of fraudulently obtained benefits, and it's easy to see how they lived the high life.
That was feeding a lifestyle, a criminal lifestyle, which left Manacharian and Jackson living a life of comfort, a life of privilege, while their victims were driving around in vehicles which were uninsured.
Having committed both benefit and insurance fraud, Jackson and Manacharian were facing a double whammy in court.
Manacharian received 5 years and 2 months imprisonment. That was broken down into 3 years for insurance fraud and 2 years, 2 months for tax fraud. Jackson received 5 years imprisonment, and that was broken down into 2 years for insurance fraud, 2 years and 2 months for tax fraud, and 18 months for benefit fraud. We have got powers available to us under the Proceeds of Crime Act to recover any assets that criminals have obtained from involvement in criminal activity. In this particular case, we will look to recover what we can from these defendants.
As a result of the actions of people like Jackson and Manacharian, we're all paying more money at a time when really we can ill afford to pay more money for our insurance premiums. For the most part, I would advise people, if the deal is too good to be true, it probably is.
Insurance fraud is on the rise, and if you have insurance of any kind, you're footing the bill. But the fraudsters have an ominous enemy.
IFED is a 35-strong unit that works tirelessly to hunt down and prosecute insurance fraudsters wherever they may be throughout England and Wales.
Through a combination of investigation, industry connections and surprise, they've made over 300 arrests and stopped millions of pounds from going to the criminals. Money which ultimately goes back in our pockets.
It's highly likely now, if you commit any insurance fraud, you will get caught.
Today, IFED is raiding 2 addresses linked to another suspected ghost broker. The 2 addresses are just a few miles apart. DS Mullish is with the team going to the main raid location.
Plan today is we're going to arrest and search the premises of a suspect in relation to what we suspect to be involved in what we call ghost broking. Key evidence would be computers and any device capable of storing data, together with documentation relating to insurance policies.
IFED rendezvous with the local officers supporting today's raid. It's 7:49 a.m. The 6-strong team enters the suspect's address.
Oh, hi. Warrant here, City London Police.
Within seconds, the door is opened. IFED recognises its suspect.
Anyone else on the premises? Someone's in there, though? Right, is this two lands? We'll explain why we're here.
Got a warrant to search this premises. And to arrest you. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention and question something which you later rely on in court. Sure. Anything you do say may be taken in evidence. Okay. Do you understand that?
Yeah, sure, sir.
DS Mullish, concerned that the suspect might tip off the other raid location, decides to round up the suspect's phones.
Where's your mobile phone? Turn those off for me. Is there a password, a number for this phone? And for your BlackBerry, is there a password for that?
Yes. All 4 of the suspect's mobile phones are now switched off. For the time being, his lines of communication are cut.
Leave that there, and I will seize them.
At the second raid location, DC Cooley and the team are falling into position outside the property. The IFED team has assistance from 2 local officers.
Good morning. Morning. Hello, I'm Declan Malone from the City of London Police.
Certainly, yes, sir.
Show you my ID.
It's okay.
What, can I come in and explain?
Yes, please.
Something?
Please come in.
Yeah. What it is, Mr. is we've got a warrant that's been issued by the City of London Magistrates Court, which allows us to search the premises.
Yes, please.
It's with regard to what they call ghost brokers, which is insurance brokers that don't really exist.
Right.
And they advertise and people buy the insurance, but then the insurance is worthless.
DC Cooley discovers that the occupant of the property is the suspect's dad, and that the suspect used to live here.
So does he still have a bedroom here? I think we'll be particularly interested in looking at that.
Yes, please.
Thanks very much.
Confident that the raid location is safe, IFED dismisses the local officers.
Good luck, James.
DC Cooley and DC Malone head upstairs to begin a search for potential evidence in the suspect's old bedroom. They start with the big stuff, computers.
You were saying that this computer here had been used by at some point or another?
Used it before.
I think we're going to have to take that hard drive, so...
Sure, yeah, why not?
The computer is seized, and its contents will be analysed by IFED specialist IT investigators. The first piece of potential evidence is in the bag. DS Mullish warns his suspect against doing a runner.
So I'm going to be relying upon you to cooperate.
Yeah, 100%.
He is very fast.
What a stunner. 16 seats, fibre optic mood lighting, flat screen TVs, a glitter wall, and even a skylight to pop up from when you want to whoop at boring people not invited to your party. It's not the kind of vehicle you nip to the shops in, but you could run a business hiring it out to revellers. That's what one man was doing with his 16-seater Lincoln Navigator, pictured here.
The claimant had purchased the vehicle for job purposes and was using it for private hire and parties and all the usual nice social activities that take place within a limousine.
Cruising around in an eye-catching motor seems like a good way to make a living. So you can imagine the owner's disappointment when his pink cash cow was taken off the road after being involved in a collision.
This was a straightforward road traffic accident whereby our insured had basically come out of a minor road, exited onto a roundabout and straight into collision with the limousine.
Straightforward or not, the damage was severe.
The damage to the limousine was allegedly quite extensive to the off side of the vehicle and also to the near side front bonnet. The claimant solicitors had organised for an engineer to inspect the vehicle, and the engineer's report indicated a value of £21,000. The extent of the damage rendered the vehicle a write-off, a total loss.
The insurer set about processing the claim for the limo owner. The paperwork was well underway when, suddenly, the insurer halted the claim. An inconsistency had been spotted.
The owner alleged that he needed a replacement vehicle for work purposes because he was without his limousine, but very oddly, rather than replacing his limousine with a like-for-like vehicle, which you'd expect he would need for the prestige jobs that he indicated that he needed to do, he hired a Mercedes C-Class.
Now, this is maths I can handle. The damaged pink limo had 16 passenger seats. A Mercedes C-Class, no more than 4. If the owner of the party vehicle business was using the Merc for work, he was regularly leaving 12 party animals stranded on the curbside. With suspicions aroused, the insurer went looking for hard facts and figures.
We decided to undertake a further examination of the vehicle.
The findings were surprising.
The vehicle was quite a tatty vehicle, actually, for the interior purposes, and certainly not one you would expect to be out on prestige jobs for parties and obviously those ladies who like pink limousines. The assessor had come back, or the engineer had come back to say that, in his opinion, the vehicle was actually only worth £4,800 as opposed to the £21,000.
The insurer's valuation of the vehicle was a fraction of the amount being claimed. However, the limo owner wouldn't back down from his £21,000 valuation of the vehicle. But his resistance was about to be broken. The insurer discovered the limo owner had taken out his insurance policy just a month before the crash.
When the claimant had incepted his policy of insurance for the limousine just 1 month prior to this incident, he had indicated to insurers that his value of the limousine was £10,000.
So the limo owner himself had declared that the car was worth no more than £10,000, less than half the £21,000 he was trying to claim for it. The game was up.
It's incredibly important that we stop exaggerated claims. Opportunistic claims make up the bulk of fraudulent claims, and it's costing the innocent motorist money.
The pink limo owner ended up settling for a tiny fraction of the £21,000 he'd been chasing, saving every honest motorist from unnecessarily paying out more for their vehicle insurance.
The Association of British Insurers have indicated that last year alone, £90 million worth of fraud was uncovered from motor accidents. It's a huge problem in this economic climate to have insurance premiums increase because of this type of exaggeration.
Today, IFED is executing a double raid. It's searching 2 addresses linked to a man suspected of selling false insurance policies. DS Mullish,
Turn those off for me.
having cut the suspect's lines of communication,
Is there a password for this phone?
is ready to begin a thorough search for potential evidence of fraudulent activity.
Is there any documentation that you can point us towards in relation to insurance policies?
Try to dig some stuff out here.
The suspect responds to DS Mullish's request by handing over a clear plastic box full to the brim with documents. Almost immediately, his attention is drawn to a bright red vehicle registration document.
This document I'm about to seize is of particular interest because it actually relates to the suspected fraudulent name of the company or business. The name on this document is the exact name of what we believe the suspect has been operating under. Potentially a key bit of evidence, yes.
A few miles away, DC Cooley is studying documents found in the suspect's old bedroom at his father's house. He has a lot to get through. DC Cooley thinks he's onto something. Within the mass of paperwork, he finds what could be damning evidence of fraud.
Now, this is interesting. It's a letter written by the suspect to an insurance company clarifying the position on someone else's insurance policy.
The suspect is not registered with the Financial Services Authority. This means that it's illegal for him to act as a broker.
He even cheekily claims that the police stopped him on the street and then verified that the insurance was correct.
DC Cooley and DC Malone have finished their search.
Seize it all in one.
Yeah.
The documents and computers seized will be added to the exhibits found at the suspect's house.
Yeah.
Back at the suspect's property, the search is about to move outside.
2 cars downstairs that need doing 18s on. He's given us consent.
Right.
We can have a quick look.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Is there anything in the cars?
Just basic CDs.
The team decide to take a look for themselves. Before heading outside, DS Mullish has a warning for the suspect.
Yeah, we will do the one-on-ones. I'm not going to handcuff you, as my colleague said.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be relying upon you to cooperate.
Yeah, 100%.
He is very fast. I'm even faster.
Okay.
This is it? Right, if you don't mind just standing.
Nothing is found in the black vehicle. Before searching the second car, DS Mullish double-checks with the suspect about its contents.
From what you say, we're not going to see anything in this car, right? All right, if you want to stay there.
Yeah, sure.
DS Mullish doesn't have to go any further than the glove compartment before finding potential evidence of fraud.
Steve, did you bring any bags? The document seized from the suspect's vehicle is a copy of an insurance document in another person's name other than the suspect.
The search is complete. IFED takes the suspect away for further questioning.
Put your seatbelt on for us. Yeah. Oh, we've had a great result today. We found the suspect at the address. We've found great evidence. And we've also, where we simultaneously executed a warrant at another address, we've also found relevant documentation there. Very good evidence to support our investigation.
Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
Subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled, dedicated police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. A specialist police unit coordinates a swoop on 3 suspected fraudsters.
Open the door, Phil, get forced open.
An angry road user tries to defraud his victim in Bristol.
He was stationary when a bus has hit him in the rear.
And a pillar of the community comes crashing down.
His reputation's gone, he's lost his career, and it really wasn't a risk worth taking.
This guy is having a bad day at the office. 5 minutes ago, he was driving this bus through the busy streets of Liverpool. But now he's calling his employers to tell them he's just been involved in a crash. His bus hit a parked white transit van. The strike to the van was forceful enough to injure its occupants. Unloading in the back of the van was Melvin Williams. In the driver's seat was owner Nathan Montgomery.
Mr Montgomery alleged that an Aviva bus had hit his parked van when he was sat in the driver's seat and a passenger also in the van with him, and said he'd been jolted sideways and backwards, and he'd also hit his head on the windscreen. He described quite a violent collision.
After exchanging details, the white van and its rattled occupants drive away. Soon after the incident, the bus company received 2 personal injury claims from Montgomery and Williams.
We then got 2 claims from the driver and the passenger, both saying that they were injured. We got medical evidence for Mr Montgomery. He had a whiplash type injury and a contusion to the head. We never got medical evidence for the passenger. He just said he'd suffered a whiplash injury.
Often, whiplash injuries don't come cheap.
The reserve for both claims was £24,000, which included costs.
It was a big blow for the bus company, especially as they don't use an external insurer for incidents like this. They self-insure, paying out of their own pockets. As part of the claims process, the bus driver who caused the collision was asked to provide his version of events. On receiving them, the bus company halted the case.
When we got the claim form from the driver, he said it was a very minor collision. He'd just misjudged it and caught the wing mirror of the parked van.
It certainly didn't sound like the kind of collision that would lead to a bash to the head and a double whiplash claim. Crucially, there was one last comment from the driver.
The driver also said he didn't think there was anybody in the vehicle. He wasn't certain, but he didn't think there was.
It was a statement that suggested the whole claim was a lie. So which account was true? A white van containing a pair of blokes being violently jolted, or an empty van getting a clipped wing mirror? How could the bus company tell? This is how. Every Aviva bus has more eyes than a spider. The bus that struck the white van was no exception. Somewhere on one of its 9 CCTV camera angles was the truth.
We interrogated the CCTV because obviously the driver had said he didn't think there was anybody in the van.
The bus company queued up the tape and took a look. This is the footage from 8 seconds before the crash. The bus is approaching the white van. This is the moment of impact.
On the CCTV, you couldn't tell whether there was anybody in the van. It looked as though there wasn't, but it wouldn't have proved it conclusively.
The cameras didn't seem to have captured any images that could settle the case. Before giving up and paying Montgomery and Williams, the bus company took another look at the footage. This time, they spotted something in the doorway of a nearby house.
We went through the whole of the CCTV and eventually spotted 2 gentlemen coming out of a house straight after the collision.
Seen here, top left.
I believed it was both Mr. Montgomery and Mr. Williams because we saw these two gentlemen then talking to the driver.
3 seconds after the incident, the bus's side camera had caught 2 people emerging from a house, seen here top left. 2 seconds later, the rear camera captures Montgomery and Williams walking up to the driver from the direction of the house. Suspecting that the 2 people leaving the house were Montgomery and Williams, the bus company challenged the claim.
Once I'd looked at the CCTV footage, I wrote to the claimant's solicitors and said that both claimants were trying to defraud Aviva and told them to discontinue. They then asked for the CCTV, which I sent to them.
On receiving the footage, the solicitors representing Montgomery and Williams agreed with the bus company.
It was just an opportunist claim. They saw the bus hit the van and obviously saw pound signs and decided to put in a fraudulent claim.
The bus company weren't going to let them off the hook. They went after Montgomery and Williams.
We decided we wanted a prosecution. We got in touch with Liverpool Police. We sent them the CCTV. They went out and arrested both claimants and they were both charged and both pleaded guilty.
Montgomery and Williams each received 150 hours of community service and 12 months probation.
Hopefully it will deter these 2 claimants from trying anything again. They've now got a criminal record which may affect them in all sorts of ways through their life.
IFED roots out a suspect from under a bed.
Is there anything here that shouldn't be here?
A dishonest driver executes a reckless manoeuvre.
Look at the footage again and again just to see whether you're missing something.
And some faulty plumbing flushes out a fraudster in Bolton.
Police officers are not above the law.
Insurance fraud is on the rise, and if you have insurance of any kind, you're footing the bill. But fraudsters need to watch their back.
IFED is a 35-strong unit that works tirelessly to hunt down and prosecute insurance fraudsters wherever they may be throughout England and Wales.
Through a combination of investigation, industry connections and surprise, they've made over 300 arrests and stopped millions of pounds from going to the criminals. Money which ultimately goes back in our pockets.
It's highly likely now, if you commit any insurance fraud, you will get caught.
Today, IFED is out in force. 2 teams aim to make a total of 3 arrests at 3 different locations. They're aiming to arrest 3 people for taking out bogus insurance policies and for staging crashes in order to make money from the claims. A practice otherwise known as crash for cash.
We're going to go to the address, we're going to execute a search warrant, we're going to seize as much evidence as we can.
The team being led by DC Kate Sibley has arrived at its first raid location. From their research, the team expects to find the house crowded.
Oh, police!
Open the door.
Morning, police officers.
We come in and have a chat.
Okay. How many are upstairs? 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
With so many people in the house, DC Sibley is facing an impromptu identity parade. She quickly flushes out her suspect.
Excuse me a second, can I ask your name, please? The reason we're here, we're investigating a matter involving a staged car crash, okay? Where false insurance claims have been made. And you have made one of those false insurance claims because you were a passenger in one of the alleged vehicles.
You're under arrest for conspiracy to defraud. You have to say anything to hold the attention.
Yeah, exactly. He does not say anything.
Who is in charge here?
I am.
You're okay. What's your position?
I'm a detective.
Do you have the arrest warrant?
We don't need an arrest warrant.
A few streets away, the IFED team, being led by PS John Schickel, is hoping to find the second suspect at their raid address.
It's the police! Open the door or else it'll get forced open. Hello.
Morning.
Who's here, mate? Who's in the house, mate?
Police. Can you open up, police?
Police, mate.
Morning. City Police.
Just want to make your way downstairs. Go into the lounge, please.
The property has several bedrooms. In one of them, P.S. Shikel finds a relative of the suspect.
Do you know?
Yeah, he's my brother.
He's your brother. Where's your brother now?
I don't know.
Well, we need to talk to him. Because your brother keeps on putting this address down as his home address, the police are always going to come back here. And we're going to keep coming back. So you must have his phone number. Could you give him a call, please?
P.S. Shikel asked the other occupants of the house about the missing suspect.
Does anybody else know? I presume you must do.
We are his siblings, but we don't know who he is though. We don't have a phone number or nothing like that.
Are you absolutely sure?
Yeah.
Why haven't you got his number?
Why should we have his number after he puts us through all this?
Till we talk to him, I'm afraid this is just going to keep happening. So we need to get hold of him. So if you do have his number or know where he is, now's the time to tell us.
The man they came for is proving to be elusive.
So we're now going to search the house looking for that.
No.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
IFED begins a search of the property. They're looking for information about the suspect and any potential evidence of fraudulent activity. Within various rooms of the property, IFED finds thousands of pounds, mostly in £50 notes.
John, there's about 10 grand in one of these rooms, isn't there?
I'm going to count this, but I want you to be here when I count it. Because I don't want someone saying there was 2,000 quid there and there wasn't.
Volumes of cash like this are suspicious, but not conclusive evidence of fraud. P.S. Shikel hones in on a stash of driving licences found in another room.
Part of what we've found in the wardrobe is several licences pertaining to different people. There's copies of the licences in different names and addresses.
Multiple driving licences are seen as one of the tools of the trade for a fraudster, allowing them to obtain many insurance policies.
We suspect it's fraud-related.
From information discovered in the property,
hello?
P.S. Shikel has a phone number for the suspect.
Is this, I'm a city police officer. We're currently executing a search warrant. Your family aren't very happy with you. You listen to me. You have put your family in this position. We've gone to court and got a search warrant. We are going to execute the search warrant and we're going to take anything that we believe belongs to you. Can you either get round here now or I'll meet you up at the police station? But we need to talk to you. You're causing your family too much stress. He's actually living somewhere else and he's making his way to talk to us. So we'll have to wait and see.
This is Inspector Mohammed Razak, a police officer who was known for spearheading a zero-tolerance crime clampdown in his neighbourhood in Bolton. Even the strong arm of the law can't hold back floodwaters. In 2008, Razak contacted his insurer, Allianz, after his house had sprung a leak.
In May 2008, we received an escape of water claim from Mr. Mohammed Razak related to a burst central heating pipe up in a bedroom, causing damage downstairs. We sent assessors out and they valued the damage at around £1,200.
Razak disagreed with the insurer's estimate, feeling they had massively undervalued the damage caused by the flood.
Mr. Razak disputed this and provided his own estimates, two of them, in the region of £8,000. We referred this back to the assessors and they amended their report and said there were aspects to the damage which they hadn't accounted for and they gave us authority to proceed towards settlement. So Mr. Razak was paid the full sum of nearly £8,000.
With his estimate of £8,000 paid in full, Razak would be able to sort out his water-damaged home and get back to keeping the riffraff off the streets of Bolton. It seemed that Mohammed Razak was an unlucky man. A while after the first incident, he suffered another flood. But Allianz, who had footed the recent £8,000 bill, were unknowingly off the hook. By this time, Razak was using a different insurer. He submitted his latest claim to them. An unlucky series of events, but that's what insurance is there for. unexpectedly, 3 years later, Allianz found themselves digging out the details of Razak's old £8,000 claim.
August 2011, we were contacted by Greater Manchester Police, who advised us that Mr. Razak was subject to an internal investigation relating to a number of potential offences. And they asked us for details of the claim.
How could there be a problem? Allianz's own assessors had twice examined Razak's claim, and they'd been convinced of its validity. Why were the police interested in the event? They had made a very suspicious discovery about Razak's second flood claim.
It turns out that Mr. Razak had actually used the same estimates and tried to make another claim for the same damage with another insurance company.
Even if his original claim for £8,000 had been genuine, it was deemed extremely unlikely that the second flood would be created under identical circumstances and lead to identical damage estimates. Mohammed Razak was under the spotlight.
We supported the police investigation by providing them with all relevant documentation relating to the claim. As a senior police officer, Mr. Razak's honesty and integrity should be beyond reproach. Sadly, in this instance, it wasn't.
His second carbon copy claim was found to be bogus.
It may well be that Mr. Razak did suffer a genuine incident in regards to the original water leak, but once he realised that he could obtain more money than he was entitled to, probably thought it was a good idea.
It was just the tip of the iceberg. Razak was also scamming money from mortgage companies and submitted other bogus claims to various insurers. Greater Manchester Police were investigating Mr. Razak for £46,000 worth of fraud.
It's not very common for us to see police officers committing insurance fraud, but it does happen. But what we have to understand is that police officers are not above the law and will be subject to the same treatment as the next person if they commit insurance fraud.
When the case went to court, Mohammed Razak was found guilty and sentenced to 18 months imprisonment.
This case highlights the fact that insurance fraud could be committed by anyone. But likewise, it also demonstrates that insurance companies do work with the police, and you may get away with it once, but you try it again, there's a very high chance you're going to get caught. Clearly, Mr. Razak thought at the time that he would get away with this. He wouldn't have done this otherwise. As a result, his reputation's gone, he's lost his career, his standing in the community, which he worked so hard for, is gone, and it really wasn't a risk worth taking.
Today, IFED is executing a triple raid, looking for 3 suspects under investigation for allegedly selling illegal motor insurance. One of the suspects has been arrested. Another has been located but is still outstanding. The third suspect is at an address yet to be visited. At the first raid location, DC Sibley has her suspect in cuffs, and a search of the premises is underway.
Do we know what room is his upstairs?
Yeah, he's showing me up. It's one straight in front of you guys.
Okay.
In her search for evidence, she focuses on one of the bedrooms.
I found a pad of paper with various names in here. I'm just trying to work out what they are. A lot of information in relation to different vehicles and post-it notes. And I don't know whether it's to do with staged accidents or ghost broking. Alex, what do you reckon on this lot? I've got all this.
Yeah. Company, Money Supermarket, okay, so
Yeah.
Confused.com, AXA, Go Compare.
Exactly. You've got everything in
So
here.
it's insurance related.
Yeah, it is. I'm having it. So I think I'll be seizing this.
With potential evidence of fraud in the bag, IFED takes its first suspect away for questioning.
We've managed to effect one arrest, who's currently at the police station. Made a thorough search of the premises, found a lot of documentation in relation to ghost broking and what we believe are staged accidents. We seized a laptop, can be used for a number of mobile phones, all of which will have to be examined. Hopefully we'll find a bit more evidence on those. We've left the premises and we're now moving on to the next address.
IFED expects to find its third suspect in this property.
Can open the door, Flower? What happened? Come
We're
down
police
and open the door.
officers,
I'll
can you
give
open the
3
door?
seconds and then I'll put the door in.
Morning.
Hello, is this your house? Who lives here with you? My husband. Car, not a lamb? No.
Anybody else in the house with you at the moment?
No.
No, just you on your own, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking for...
Why?
Because I need to speak to him. Do you know him?
Why?
Do you know him? Not why, do you know him?
What happened? Tell me.
No, I need to speak to him. Does he live here? No. Where does he live?
I don't know.
You don't know. I need to speak to him. Do you know him?
The suspect is found hiding under a bed. IFED's DC Cooley escorts the handcuffed suspect to the lounge.
Right, I'm arresting you on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand? Okay. Where are all your documents and things? Upstairs. Papers? How long have you lived here?
It's nearly 2.
Nearly 2 years. Is there anything here that shouldn't be here that we're going to find?
Drugs, cash, weapons.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing for you to be worried about. Just don't lie to us.
With the suspect arrested, IFED can begin the search for evidence of suspected fraudulent motor insurance claims.
We are going to be taking your laptop. Just to let you know. I found a Visa debit card in our suspect's wallet, not in his name. I believe linked to the other address, but that's something we'll have to check out. It just makes the case a lot stronger. The fact there is a link there. We're not just coming to 2 totally separate addresses.
At PS Shakel's raid address, the search is coming to an end.
Yeah, it's been very successful. We've had over 40 exhibits that we've seized. That includes money, we think over £10,000. We've received or seized numerous driving licences, vehicle documentation, insurance policies, claims, different crib sheets.
And the outstanding suspect PS Shakel phoned earlier has handed himself in.
We're just going to go now to a local police station where the suspect has arrived, where I'm about to arrest him and interview him and see what he has to say. So we're extremely pleased.
A few streets away, DC Sibley sends her suspect away for further questioning.
Hi, John, all right? We've got number 3 as well. He tried to hide beside the bed, but the uniform jumped on him, so we've got him. So you got a full house? It's a good result. We weren't expecting to get 3 out of 3, if we're honest with you, possibly 2, but we've got all 3, so it's a good result for us today.
What do you do when a 12-ton bus slams into the back of you at 30 miles an hour? The owner of this recently rear-ended car decided to have a stern word with the bus driver.
This is an incident that occurred in Bristol on the 7th of January 2012, around about 1:15 in the afternoon. The third party in his statement advises that he was stationary when a bus has hit him in the rear.
After exchanging details, the bus and car driver continue their journeys.
The third party submitted a claim arising from this incident for injuries to his neck and back, his leg and his foot. He submitted claim for the damage to his vehicle in the region of £2,600 and also a claim for alternative hire of a vehicle while his own was being repaired. The total of the claims submitted was around about £3,700.
The bus company started to process the car owner's claim. Pretty straightforward. Bus hits much smaller car, wallop, hand over the cash. But first, just a couple of things.
As we would do with all claims of this nature, we decided to thoroughly investigate this just to make sure that we're paying the correct amounts and the circumstances are as the third party is stating.
With the risk of a heavy financial blow, the bus company took measures to fully investigate all aspects of the claim. This included looking closely at the accident and medical reports submitted by the claimant.
When he's reported the circumstances to his medical expert, he's actually advised that he was still in motion when he was hit in the rear by the bus. the statements given by the third party to his medical expert and the statement given to us initially differ significantly in the version of events.
This left the bus company suspicious. Before they could settle the claim, they would have to straighten out the car owner's story. They called upon the 360-degree coverage of the bus's exterior cameras. The footage starts off innocently enough. The bus driver sets off from Bristol Temple Meads train station. The claimant first appears in view on a dual carriageway.
The CCTV footage shows a vehicle overtaking the bus, then stopping shortly ahead of the bus, straddling both lanes.
Possibly due to the manoeuvre executed by the claimant, the bus driver engages in a brief exchange with him.
The bus driver sounds his horn at this driver and goes round him and continues.
The bus company were originally looking to see what happened in the moments leading up to the crash. But they were now watching a potential road rage incident. Shortly, they were going to find out who was at fault for the collision.
The third party in his statement advises that he was stationary when a bus has hit him in the rear, but the third party has neglected to advise what's happened in the build-up towards the incident or what happened in the aftermath.
This is what happened. Seconds after their first exchange, the claimant overtakes and pulls in front of the 12-ton bus. What occurs next is incredible. The claimant executes a triplet of hard braking maneuvers. 1, 2, 3, causing the crash. The innocent bus driver had no chance of protecting himself, his vehicle and passengers against the reckless actions of the claimant.
It's a case where you look at the footage again and again just to see whether you're missing something. You begin to second guess whether you're viewing the footage properly, but looking at it, we can see no reason why he braked.
Guess what? The bus company refused to pay the claimant.
What did happen was we alerted the police of our concerns regarding this matter, and subsequently the third party was prosecuted, fined £265 and received 7 points on his licence. Whenever a motorist deliberately carries out an action, whether it be out of anger or to commit a potentially fraudulent claim, the key thing to remember is that it does put people at risk, and this is what has happened in this situation. One day it could be injury or damage to property, another day it could be you that's at risk.